Chapter 12:30. Everyone was laughing heartily, but Da-jun was silently wiping away his tears. This kind of behavior that ruined the atmosphere didn't annoy the other children. On the contrary, the children were very united. When they heard Sister Pomegranate say that Da-jun was crying, they all gathered around Da-jun. Kiki was the same. The little girl's hands were clasped in front of her, and she looked at her best friend worriedly with tears flowing down her cheeks. Da-jun, what's the matter? Sister Pomegranate asked. Da-jun unconsciously used his spoon to scoop up the rice in his bowl while trying to hold back the tears in his eyes. But the more he tried to hold back, the more his heart churned. Tears fell from the corners of his eyes and the tip of his nose. After a while, he calmed down and said in a choked voice, "I miss Daddy." Fortunately, Nuo Yi and Nina had already finished eating and had gone upstairs with the uncles to get a change of clothes. Otherwise, these two children might have been affected by Da-jun's feelings. "I miss Daddy too." Xian nodded beside him. Today, little chubby Xian performed the best. Although his father wasn't by his side, he stood up for his friends and wasn't timid at all during the mission. He didn't cry as sadly as he did at the beginning. Even if he said that he missed his father, it was only in his heart. The expression on his face was still very natural, and he didn't look like he was about to cry. However, Kiki was different from Xian. When Da-jun said those words in a choked voice, it made the well-buried longing for her father surge in her heart. She secretly wiped the tears from the corner of her eyes, but her mouth couldn't help but twitch. She sniffled and said, "Brother Da-jun, don't cry. You make me want to cry too." The little girl's voice was a little sobbing. Looking at her red eyes and her tear-stained face, Kang felt that he should stand up and say something at this time. "Aya, don't cry. What's there to cry about?" Kang grinned. In addition to showing a positive attitude that he had never shown before, he also winked at Da-jun and said, "Da-jun, you see, how brave you were this morning? Our fathers are leaving, and you're so happy. Everyone else is crying. Don't be afraid, they will definitely come back." "Yes, Kang is right. Your father will definitely come back. But when they come back, they definitely won't want to see you crying, right?" Sister Pomegranate placed one hand on Da-jun's shoulder and pulled Kiki over with her other hand, letting her lean on her body. "So, you have to learn to be strong, so that your father can be very happy when he comes back." Kiki nodded vigorously. She wiped her tears, but she still burst into laughter. No one understood why the little girl was smiling through her tears. In fact, she was thinking about her father's surprised expression when he came back and saw that she had earned so much money. Her heart was blooming with joy. Xian stood behind big brother Da-jun like a little man. He put one hand on Da-jun's shoulder and said generously, "Don't cry." Everyone was still touched by little fatty Xian's loyalty. Then, Xian stood on the steps and pressed her chubby little body against Da-jun's body with both hands. "He won't cry, he's very strong." Sister Pomegranate sat beside Da-jun and comforted him. After a while, the few children gathered downstairs with a change of clothes. In the open space in the middle of the earthen building, there were several wooden basins that looked like bathtubs. Well, it was actually a bathtub. Sister Pomegranate stood in the middle and demonstrated with a large wooden ladle. "Okay. Each of you put the water in the wooden bucket and the wooden basin." Just now, Kiki asked Sister Pomegranate and she said that girls couldn't bathe outside. Sister Pomegranate had already comforted her and only asked the girls to wash their hair outside and then go back to the house to bathe by themselves. As for the boys didn't care. Kang might be a little shy, but Xian had already stripped himself naked. Xian was the most comfortable because Sister Pomegranate had already scooped the water for him. The chubby little boy jumped into the wooden basin and used the wooden ladle to scoop water for himself. Hualala, the cool water from the well was the most beautiful gift in this hot summer. Little fatty Xian was so comfortable that he closed his eyes. However, it seemed that his happiness didn't last long. Next to him was a little girl who was probably only a little over a year old. She was sitting on a plastic horse and playing. Looking at little fatty Xian's chubby shoulders and curly hair, she happily called out, "Sister." However, little fatty Xian hated it when others called him sister. Last time, when he was selling fruit stuffing with his father on the Shishan Plateau, the other children called him sister. How could he be sister? He was obviously a very good and strong little boy. I'm calling you brother. Xian anxiously turned his head and explained. However, when he turned around, he scared the little girl away. Xian was still pitifully lying in the wooden basin and calling out, "Call me brother, don't call me sister." Well, who asked you to have such an interesting perm? It had to be said that Xian's movements were very agile. He quickly finished his bath and ran out of the wooden tub naked. At this time, Nuo Yi and Kang were still playing with Nina. Kiki had just squatted down and untied her ponytail. She leaned against the wooden basin and began to wash her hair. The way the little girl washed her hair was really beautiful. Her gentle and beautiful face was tilted sideways. Her posture was a little awkward, but it also made people feel that the little girl was very delicate and made people feel sorry for her. Her long and soft hair was like a waterfall falling into the water. Very quickly, it was full of water and became even brighter and glossier. Her slender fingers gently rubbed the foam, making people feel as if they were plucking the strings of a peeper. It was as if there was a melodious ancient song echoing in their ears. Perhaps the photographer couldn't help but move closer. The little girl felt it and slightly raised her head. Her eyes were more beautiful than the moon and there was a trace of shyness in them. Although it was only a glimpse, it made people think about it and feel pity for her. At this scene, some talented audience members couldn't help but sigh. Back then, when Shisha was washing clothes by the stream, she was probably just as delicate and lovely. Otherwise, how could the wise king of Wu, Fu Chai, be so infatuated with her that he abandoned the imperial court? Otherwise, how could the Shang Saint Dao, Duke Xu, retreat when he was successful and didn't ask for thousands of gold and 10,000 riches, but was willing to take a beautiful girl and sail the 5 lakes? Chichi was still young and immature. She was just a budding beauty, but in this quiet, beautiful moonlight and dimly lit environment, one could actually catch a glimpse of the heavenly beauty that would captivate even the birds and beasts when she grew up. Of course, at this time, Kiki wasn't the only one who grabbed the camera and the audience's attention. On the other side, Sister Pomegranate was amused by the shameless Xian who had just climbed out of the wooden tub. However, she was currently washing Da Jun's hair. At the crucial moment, she could only hold back her laughter and shout, "Hey, Xian, put on your clothes." Chapter 1231. The children were very enthusiastic. When Kang and Nuo Yi heard Sister Shuliu's call, they ran over to help their little friend excitedly. However, although Xian was short, he was really a meaty ball and was very heavy. The clothes were still okay, but the pants were really stumbling. Xian couldn't stand steadily on one foot, or when he wanted to stand firmly, he couldn't find his shoes. Kang and Nuo Yi's older brothers couldn't carry Xian. In order to put on the pants, the 3 children almost fell together. Seeing this, the audience couldn't help but laugh. This was a kind smile. Some were amused by little chubby Xian's funny performance, and some were touched by the children's efforts to help their friend. After a while, Xian finally put on his loose clothes. Kiki had also washed her hair. Of course, the little girl who loved cleanliness washed her hair again and again until the foam on her hair was washed clean. She used the towel just now to wring the water out of her hair, but it was still wet. Kiki shook her hair, and the long hair sprinkled water everywhere. The photographer was so scared that he ran away, but the little girl giggled. She was too naughty. "Kiki, do you want to use a hairdryer to dry your hair? It'll dry faster this way," the director sister asked. Kiki thought for a while, but still shook her head. She said seriously, "You can't use a hairdryer. Mama said that a girl's hair should be dried naturally. The hairdryer will make the hair ugly. How could a girl who liked beautiful girls use a hairdryer to dry her hair faster?" If Papa was here, Kiki thought again. He would definitely ask Kiki to go over and dry her hair manually. But Papa wasn't here now. What should she do? Chichi looked at the director's sister. Her small eyes were very pleasant, making it hard for people to reject her. "Sister, can you give me a dry towel?" She just had to wipe it and it would be dry. Sister Shuliu was outside waiting on the little beauty Nina, and Xian also turned into a scrubbing technician, applying soap for brother Nuo Yi. While these ridiculous scenes were playing out, Kiki had already returned to her room. According to Papa's instructions, she covered the camera on the wall and took a beautiful cold bath. Chichi changed into a refreshing little dress and came out. Her loose hair, black crystal-like eyes, and this cute black dress made her look like a night elf in the forest. The little boys who were already sitting at the table were all mesmerized by her. Hey. You all don't look at me. You don't think I'm pretty, right? Sister Shiliu smiled and waved her little fan and asked. Sister Shiliu is beautiful too. I think Sister Shiliu is beautiful. Da Jun also flattered. But I think Sister Kiki is prettier. Xian only had eyes for Sister Kiki. His curly little head turned, and he smiled foolishly at his sister, wanting her to sit next to him. But he didn't realize that in order to sit next to Sister Nina, there was no more space next to him. Nuo Yi, am I pretty? Nina held her brother's hand and asked seriously. I think Nina is pretty too. Nuo Yi gave a great answer. Kiki was a little shy. Of course, being praised as pretty was something that made a little girl happy. She walked past brother Xian happily, and when she sat down, her smile was sweet and happy. They were still sitting in the same order as when they were eating. Kang felt his sister walk past and sit next to him, with the soft fragrance of soap. The little boy's face suddenly tensed up. Fortunately, he always had this expression, so no one noticed or laughed at him. Where is the money? What about now? Auntie Shiliu will return it to you. Sister Shiliu said so much that she forgot that she used to call herself sister and not auntie. But after becoming auntie, Sister Shiliu's tone became much gentler, and she didn't rush to coax. Did you have a hard time earning money today? Tell me. Yes. Nuo Yi and Da Jun took the money and nodded. Even the shy Nina opened her mouth. She was becoming more and more of a part of the group. Kang was nervous. His sister gave him half of the money when she took it, and he kept looking at the food on the table. He didn't dare to eat, and he forgot to speak. I feel very tired. But it's also very fun. Chichi took the money and answered Sister Pomegranate's question seriously. After the little girl finished speaking, she looked at Brother Kang curiously, as if she was wondering if Brother Kang didn't have fun in the afternoon. Xian was busy eating, and there were many delicious snacks on the table. His style was completely different from the other friends who were waiting for Sister Shiliu to ask questions. However, seeing Brother Xian eating so happily, Kiki couldn't help but eat as well. Earning money is tiring, right? Have you ever thought about what you want to do when you grow up? Sister Shiliu asked. Kiki was the first to answer this question, because in kindergarten, the teacher asked them to think about this question. The little girl devoutly said as she ate, when I grow up, I want to sing and dance. But my papa can't sing, his singing is terrible. The little girl directly jumped to another topic. But my mama sings very well, and she can play the guitar. She's super good. In terms of talent, Kiki finally didn't worship her father. What about Kang? Sister Shiliu quickly changed the topic. Be a director. No. Kang denied. Be a photographer. Sister Shiliu guessed again. No. Kang finally smiled a little, and the little boy's smile was quite handsome. Be a pilot for the cruise private plane. He also jumped out word by word. However, they didn't know which crew was so rich that they could afford a private plane. Brother Kang, what is a private plane? Kiki asked a question that the other friends didn't understand. A private plane is a plane that my father only flies when he's shooting a movie, Kang said with some pride. Fly a plane. Then, Brother Kang, can I take your plane? Kiki looked at Brother Kang with surprise and admiration. When she was young, she thought that her father was very good at driving. Later, when she grew up, she liked planes because they could shuttle through the clouds, which was very amazing. Kang was looked up at by his sister with admiration, and at this moment, he suddenly felt very happy. The corner of his mouth had already revealed his teeth. Of course, Kang's hand fiddled with the fried peas on the plate, and pretended to throw out a sentence casually. Chapter 1232. I've never thought of limiting her future. Why would I? Every child has their own dreams, just like us when we were young. Having our own dreams from a young age is a wonderful thing. After the show was broadcast, Poplar Fruit said in an interview with a reporter from Tengzun News. On the show, Kiki said what she wanted to do when she grew up. Kiki's answer surprised many of the audience. Kiki wasn't obsessed with academics like her father, who she admired the most. Instead, she liked to develop in the field of literature and art. Poplar Fruit's reaction was very calm and even a little cheerful. He laughed and said, "As her father, I can't teach her anything in this field. However, I will give Kiki the greatest support and protection so that she can pursue her dreams bravely and happily." Poplar Fruit showed a lot of tolerance. This also gave many parents from the 70s and 80s a topic to ponder. However, there was no need to worry about this because the children were still young. When they talked about their dreams, it was more of a passion. Who knew about the future? The show was still ongoing. Nuo Yi, what do you want to be when you grow up? Sister Pomegranate asked Nuo Yi, who was a little crazy. The audience looked over expectantly. Would Nuo Yi's answer be interesting? Would Nuo Yi, who was obsessed with the world of Journey to the West, think about it again? I like to practice martial arts. However, he didn't. Nuo Yi's eyes looked around, but his expression was very honest. Practice martial arts? Sister Pomegranate was a little surprised. Yes, I like to practice martial arts. In order to prove his passion for martial arts, Nuo Yi put down the money in his hand and waved his small fist. However, the little boy's fist didn't have any pattern. It was purely a fist of tortoise. Kiki's mouth was mumbling as she ate the delicious doo-doo. She turned her head to look and chuckled as she ate. I also like to practice martial arts, little Chuangshuan retorted. He was the son of the boxing champion, Zhu Shimin. In the first 2 episodes, the audience had already seen the power of little fatty Xian's fists when he was playing with his father. Little chubby Xian was naive, but he had a passion for boxing that other children didn't have. Everyone approved of his future development in boxing. Kiki giggled. She happily said to her good friends, "Then, Xian, brother Nuo Yi, you can learn kung fu from my papa. My papa is super powerful. My father is the best. He's the champion." Xian said, unconvinced. "What do you want to do after learning kung fu?" Sister Pomegranate stopped their argument and asked. "After we practice, we'll go and beat up the bad guys," Xian said. The innocent words of the children made the audience smile. Dajuan's dream was a bit similar to Kangkang's. He also wanted to fly a plane, but he wanted to fly a bomber. "Because I don't know how to operate a bomber. I have to practice." The reason was also very pure and interesting. Sister Pomegranate was dumbfounded. There was also Nina. She listened with great interest, but when it was her turn to answer, the little beauty just smiled and didn't know how to answer. She didn't have as many dreams as her brothers and sisters. Nina didn't know that much. "Brother, I think this is super delicious. You should try it too." Kiki and Kangkang's relationship had indeed warmed up a lot today. The little girl leaned close to Kangkang's ear and whispered in a clear voice. Kangkang still wanted to pretend to be calm, but the curve of the corner of her mouth couldn't be hidden. "Let me ask you a question. What do you like about your father?" Sister Pomegranate continued to chat with the children. "He's funny." After whispering to her sister, Kangkang suddenly became energetic and was the first to answer the question. However, President Kang's words were a bit hard to believe. Hu Jun was funny. This was probably the most interesting joke of the day. Sister Pomegranate looked at the little girl who was wearing a soft black dress and sitting gracefully on the side. "I like Papa." Kiki was the first to answer. "What do you like about your father?" Sister Pomegranate asked. Her question made the little girl a bit embarrassed. She counted with her fingers and said, "Papa is very handsome. He loves me very much. He loves Mama very much. And Papa is very powerful. He's the most powerful in the world. Aya, I can't think of what I like about Papa. I like everything about Papa. There's nothing I don't like." The little girl smiled sweetly. Her strong attachment to her father was written on the little girl's pretty little face. Perhaps when the first episode was broadcast, there were still many people who didn't know about the deep relationship between Poplar Fruit and Kiki. However, something that happened later shocked the whole country. After that, the media's sensational reports also let everyone know that Poplar Fruit raised the newborn Kiki alone. When they saw this episode again, looking at the little girl's sweet and happy smile, people more or less sighed and silently raised their hands to give their blessings. But this was all in the future. The children's answers were all different. Xian Xian was a bit puzzling as he liked to see his father smile. Nuo Yi warmly liked his father to kiss him. They were all very interesting. Later on, Sister Pomegranate asked a few questions. What made people feel warm was that when Da Jun answered the questions, he said a lot about his father's shortcomings. His longing for his father condensed into 2 words, "I miss him very much." Hearing this, people's hearts went numb and soft. His little friends came forward to comfort him, especially Nuo Yi, who even kissed his little friend's cheek. The white and round egg-headed Da Jun, and the mixed-blood handsome Nuo Yi. In this scene, fans of the 2 children's CP popped up in the audience. They were making a fuss on Weibo that they wanted the 2 children to be together. This kind of fanaticism was intoxicating. Everyone saw Xian Xian eating and laughed at little fatty Xian for being a little foodie. However, the attentive audience also saw that Kiki also ate from the beginning to the end. If Poplar Fruit was here, Poplar Fruit would not let her eat so many hot fried snacks for the sake of the little girl's body. But when Poplar Fruit was not here, the little girl became a runaway little wild horse. Eating and eating, her mouth could not stay still. "What do you want to say to your father the most?" Sister Pomegranate asked. After a while, the children under Sister Pomegranate's guidance told the camera that they loved their father. "I love Papa too." Kiki was still eating. She smacked her red and tender little mouth and smiled sweetly. After saying that she loved Papa, Kiki was still a little unsatisfied. The little girl was still chewing doo-doo in her mouth. She blinked her eyes and mischievously pouted her little mouth to blow a kiss to the camera. Then she giggled and said, "Miss you." Chapter 1233. The tea party was over, and the children went back to their rooms. Kiki also went to her room. It was convenient for her to live on the first floor. "Xian Xian, where are you going?" "Your room is upstairs." Sister Pomegranate shouted, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Everyone turned their heads to look. Little chubby Xian was following behind Chichi's elder sister, preparing to enter the house as well. Kang Kang looked at them and curled her lips. She thought that Boss Kang was more mature. "I want to accompany my sister." Xian Xian looked at Sister Pomegranate and said naturally. He still remembered the promise he made to Uncle Yang in the morning. "Sister doesn't need you to accompany her. Come back." Sister Pomegranate regained her domineering attitude. "Thank you, Xian Xian. You should go back to sleep too. I'm going home too." Kiki stood at the door with one hand on the door frame and the other hand waving goodbye to her brother. She went back to her room alone. She was not in a hurry to do anything else. Instead, she walked around the room. She looked under the bed, opened the closet door, and looked behind the door. "Kiki, what are you looking for?" one of Kiki's assistants asked. "I'm looking for Papa." Kiki pouted and said disappointedly. It turned out that Kiki thought that her father would come back at night. She thought that her father might have already come back and was hiding somewhere to give her a big surprise. Unfortunately, the little girl was disappointed. The assistant sister was stunned. She was still young and didn't understand children as well as the director sister. She didn't know how to comfort Chichi. She could only go up and hug her, gently saying, don't worry. Your father will come back." Although she comforted her, it was useless. The little girl was still a little lonely. She climbed back to her bed and looked outside the window. Although the photographer was standing outside the door, Kiki was not looking at him. The moonlight was cool, and the lights outside were dim, but Chichi was like a secluded girl from the old days. She stared into the distance, hoping only to see her beloved father's figure return. Suddenly, a shadow flashed outside the window. Kiki was happy and raised her head. However, she was about to be disappointed again because the person who came in was the assistant sister who had just left. Kiki, look, I brought you a phone. You can call your mother now. Looking at Kiki's pitiful little eyes, the assistant sister's heart was about to break. She deliberately said it cheerfully, trying to arouse the little fellow's mood. Kiki's eyes lit up. Kneeling on the bed, she grabbed the phone with her white and tender hands and asked happily, "Can I call Papa?" "This is your father's phone." The assistant pointed to Kiki's iPhone 6 and said with a smile, "He's on a mission now, so he didn't bring his phone out." "Is that so?" Kiki was a little disappointed, but being able to call Mama still made Kiki a little interested. She also had a lot to say to Fong Bebe at the moment. Kiki unlocked the phone with ease. Poplar Fruit did not set a fingerprint password, nor did he look for a contact. He directly dialed his mother's phone number on the phone. Kiki knew that the difference between her mother's and father's phone numbers was only 1 digit, so it was easy to remember. The phone rang for a while before Fong Bebe picked it up. On the other side, Fong Bebe, like the other mothers, had already received the notice from the program group. Otherwise, if the child's mother turned off her phone, wouldn't this call be very awkward? "Mama." Chichi picked up the phone and said coquettishly in her soft voice, "I miss you so much." "I miss you too. Have you been good outside?" Fang Bebe's young but gentle voice came from the other side of the phone. Although it was separated by radio waves, the deep care and concern in her voice could be heard from the other side of the phone. "Yes, but Papa is not here today." The little girl pouted and said with a bit of bitterness, "Papa left on the bus this morning." "Is that so? Dad left so early? He hasn't come back yet?" Fong Bebe asked worriedly. "Yes, I miss Papa so much, but Sister said that Papa won't come back until tomorrow." Kiki muttered gloomily. "Then what are you going to do tonight? Are you with your other brothers?" Fong Bebe asked. "No, they all went back. Papa is not here, so I have to stay in the princess's room alone." Kiki looked around. She was not afraid now, but if it was a little later, her sister and uncle would go to sleep, and she would have to stay in this empty room alone. Kiki's eyes began to turn red, and her voice was choked with sobs. Although it was the princess's room, Kiki would not be happy if she lived alone. Moreover, it was the first time the little girl lived in a room alone. Fong Bebe heard it. In fact, Fong Bebe had witnessed Kiki's growth in the past 4 years. How could she not know that Kiki would be afraid? However, Fong Bebe did not comfort the little girl directly. She said softly, "Kiki, when Mom was young, Grandpa and Grandma sometimes went out to work at night, leaving Mom at home. At that time, Mom's house was not as beautiful as it is now. There was no big yard, and there were not so many beautiful flowers. Do you know how Mom waited until Grandpa and Grandma came back at night?" Fong Bebe asked. "I don't know." She was still sobbing, but Kiki's attention had been transferred to Fong Bebe's story at the other end of the phone. "At that time, Mom had a good friend at home called Xiao Dai, just like the Barbie doll I gave you, Kiki. It was a cute kitten pillow. Mom would say to it, 'Xiao Dai, Dad hasn't come back yet. Can you protect me? I'm afraid there will be bad guys.'" Fong Bebe said as if she was telling a fairy tale. The little girl was fascinated. She sat upright with her legs half crossed, listening attentively. "Then Xiao Dai would bravely sit by my bed, just like Grandpa, and no bad guys would dare to appear." Fong Bebe said softly, "When Mom woke up, Grandpa came back. Xiao Dai is so powerful." Kiki opened her mouth and said with admiration, "Yes." Then Grandpa said, "Wow, my good daughter, you are so brave. Dad is not here, but you can still sleep at home so obediently." Fong Bebe smiled and asked, "Kiki, do you want your dad to praise you for your bravery when he comes back?" "Yes, but I don't have Xiao Dai." Kiki pouted and said, "I also want Xiao Dai. Don't you have a Pleasant Goat school bag?" Fong Bebe asked, "Is Pleasant Goat with you?" Chapter 1234. It's here. Kiki happily took her cute little school bag from the table next to her. Looking at the prominent shape of Pleasant Goat on the little school bag, it was not the same as last year's, Kiki seemed to have a little more confidence. She said happily, Ma, pleasant goat is more powerful than Dumbo. Yes. Fong Beibei also said with a smile, pleasant goat can defeat Grey Wolf. Pleasant goat defeated Grey Wolf and Red Wolf and protected the whole sheep village. Kiki rushed to say. Speaking of pleasant goat, the little girl was in high spirits, as if she didn't have red eyes and tears because she missed her father. Kiki, now that you have pleasant goat, can you be like Ma and face difficulties bravely, and then let Papa, who will definitely come back tomorrow, be happy for Kiki? Fong Beibei's voice was still very gentle, but the tone was slightly raised, which made Kiki feel more confident and motivated. I want Papa to be happy, but I also want Papa to come back early. Kiki held Pleasant Goat's school bag and nodded hard. Great. Fong Beibei said with a smile, if Kiki has always been so obedient, strong, and brave, Papa will definitely finish the task and come back quickly. Is Papa still doing the task? Kiki asked curiously. Yes, he must be doing the task. Otherwise, he loves Kiki so much, how can he not come back? Fong Beibei said with a smile, Mama believes that as long as Kiki sleeps well and is not afraid of anything, she should be able to see Papa when she wakes up. Moreover, Papa may have a big surprise waiting for Kiki. Surprise? What kind of surprise? Is it a gift? The little girl happily twisted her waist and began to imagine. Then, she thought of something and quickly lowered her head to the phone. She said seriously, I want a gift, but I also want Papa to come back. I want Papa to come back with or without a gift. Kiki is great. You're so sensible. Dad will be very happy when he comes back. Fong Beibei said with a smile. Then, Kiki, do you dare to sleep alone now? Yeah. Kiki nodded. She put Pleasant Goat's bag on the edge of the bed and said seriously, I'm not afraid anymore. Pleasant Goat will protect Kiki. Yes, then Kiki should go to sleep now. When you wake up, Daddy will be back. Fong Beibei said softly as if singing a lullaby. Okay, good night, Ma. Kiki said good night to her mother and then turned off the phone. Of course, the little girl didn't go to sleep yet. After gaining the courage to be alone from her mother, Kiki went out to return the phone and folded the clothes she changed out of in the evening neatly. Then, she put them on the chair beside the bed. Neatness was just a concept. Kiki, who didn't seriously learn how to fold clothes, just folded the clothes according to her memory of her father's method. There were also messy little shoes neatly placed against the wall. The storybook she read at noon was also gently tidied up on the table. When it was time to sleep, the little girl walked to the door and waved to the cameraman who had been standing at the door. She said sweetly, I'm going to sleep. Good night, Uncle. At this time, Kiki closed the door and climbed back into the bed. She said good night to the loyal guardian, Pleasant Goat, pulled the quilt and closed her eyes. The little girl was really going to sleep this time. She had been yawning for a long time. Now that she had let go of her fear and missed her father, she closed her eyes sweetly. Her father's dream was already waving to the little girl. Poplar Fruit was back. At this time, a few tall figures hurried over the threshold of Chun Gui Lu. It was the fathers who had been worried about their children all day. They all had bamboo toys that they had worked hard to make in the afternoon. Poplar Fruit was even carrying a big guy. However, at this time, the fathers didn't have time to chat. They greeted each other and scattered to follow the cameraman and director to their children's rooms. Poplar Fruit was the same. However, before entering the room, he first put the big guy down and washed his hands before gently pushing the door open to enter. The cameraman didn't want to disturb them. He just stood at the door and in front of the window quietly taking pictures. Poplar Fruit first stood by the bed and looked lovingly at the little girl who was sleeping soundly wrapped in a small quilt. He didn't know what she saw in her dream, but the little girl's mouth had a sweet smile. Her long eyelashes were like the most beautiful arcs in the world, outlining the girl's most beloved aura. She was really like a beautiful sleeping beauty. The audience saw this picturesque scene through the camera lens. Just as many people sighed with emotion, they really wanted to go over and gently hug the little girl in their arms to protect her. However, that was not what Poplar Fruit noticed. His daughter had just cried. How could Poplar Fruit not understand the daughter that he had spent all his time with and loved since she was a child? Poplar Fruit didn't dare to say it for others, but for Kiki, although her slightly swollen eyelids were not obvious, Poplar Fruit could see it at a glance. His heart ached and he quietly watched for a while. The cameraman thought that Poplar Fruit was going to stand like this for the whole night and then take in every detail of his daughter that he had missed today. Only then did Poplar Fruit put down the school bag on his back and put it next to the suitcase. Kiki had already tidied up the clothes, shoes, and everything in the room in an orderly manner. Poplar Fruit only then noticed that his eyes showed a little surprise, and his action of taking off his shoes had an obvious pause. Back on the bed, Poplar Fruit didn't want to disturb his daughter's sleep, so he gently lifted her up and let her sleep in a little space. However, Poplar Fruit underestimated his daughter's longing for him. At this time, Kiki had just fallen asleep, but she didn't sleep very well. In a daze, she raised her eyelids and saw the familiar figure. "Papa," the little girl mumbled. She still hadn't woken up from her dream. However, after all, she had just fallen asleep, and she wasn't so sleepy that she turned over and fell asleep again. "Papa is back." Poplar Fruit smiled and said softly, "Papa." This time, Kiki really found that her sleepiness was completely gone, and only a surprised smile was left. From the bed, from her father's arms, she lifted her body, put her hands around her father's neck, and threw herself into her father's arms. "Papa, is this a dream?" The little girl still couldn't believe it. "It's not a dream, Papa is really back." His daughter's call turned into a gentle heart. Poplar Fruit wanted to cry at this moment. He let the little head floating with the fragrance of green apples rub on his face, but he was reluctant to let go of his daughter. "Papa, I missed you so much." After her father came back, the strength and bravery just now disappeared. The little girl wanted to be hugged by her father like this, and then she pouted her mouth and acted coquettishly. "I missed you too," Poplar Fruit gently said in his daughter's ear. He suppressed his inner feelings. "Where did you go? Why did you come back now?" The little girl stuck to her father for a while, then gently put her head on her father's broad and warm chest, and muttered, "Papa went to a lot of places, it's a long story." Poplar Fruit printed a tender love on his daughter's forehead. Just now, he saw the red mark on his daughter's left elbow, and knew that his daughter must not have had a smooth day, but he didn't want to ask too much. He wanted to leave some suspense, and then he would go back and watch the little girl's performance on TV. "But I want to hear it." Kiki giggled and raised her hand to touch her father's chin, which had not been shaved for 2 days, and said, "Papa's beard is hurting, so it must not be a dream." Poplar Fruit lovingly rubbed his daughter's little head, and said with a smile, "If you want to hear it, then lie down, close your eyes, and sleep. Just like how Papa usually tells you bedtime stories, Papa will tell you where he went today, okay?" "En." The little girl lay down and held her father's hand in her arms. Poplar Fruit simply changed the position, and let the little girl lie in his arms, and then held his big hand. "Today, Papa went to a kindergarten with a lot of children, with your Uncle Hu, Uncle Lin, and Uncle Zhu, to learn to be a child." The night gradually became deeper, and in her father's soft voice, Kiki was filled with the happiness of her father's return, and slowly fell asleep. Chapter 1235. Early in the morning, Hucking Village was full of birds and flowers. Poplar Fruit slipped out early in the morning to do his morning exercise and enjoyed the vibrant scenery of the fields. In such an environment, Poplar Fruit felt that his internal strength was running a lot faster. However, Poplar Fruit did not have any nostalgia. Practicing kung fu was just one of his hobbies. There were too many beautiful things in life that he needed to cherish. Poplar Fruit would not give up his life in the city or even abandon his wife and children in order to practice kung fu. Returning to the earthen building refreshingly, Poplar Fruit found that Zhu Shimin had also gotten up. He was still playing professional boxing, so regardless of whether he was recording a program or not, he was always singing and punching every day. "Brother Zhu, good morning." Poplar Fruit smiled and waved at Zhu Shimin, saying, "You're really amazing. Brother Zhu, you're also going for the boxing champion's golden belt today, right?" Poplar Fruit really didn't know much about boxing, but he still knew about the golden belt. "Don't say that." The boxing champion is really overrated. Zhu Shimin smiled and said, now that I'm older, it's getting harder and harder to win games. Aren't competitive games all about youth? Now it's the world of young people. Brother Zhu, you're being modest, right? Poplar Fruit laughed and said, but Brother Zhu, to be honest, you're number one in my heart. This was not a compliment at all. Before Zhu Shimin, Poplar Fruit had never heard of any powerful people in the Chinese boxing world. There were still some, but they were not famous. The famous monk Elong was not a professional boxer. After Zhu Shimin appeared out of nowhere, he had harvested countless championships and gold medals. Among them, the most talked about was his successful defense of the gold medal in the Olympic Games. Watching Zhu Shimin's game was a kind of enjoyment. Not only did he win with irresistible momentum, but also his self-created pirate-style fighting style. When he hit, he immediately escaped. The fist wind was simple and bright, which was pleasing to the eye. Zhu Shimin smiled and asked, Poplar Fruit, do you want to have a match with me? Yesterday, I saw your skills. You have real kung fu. You practice Tai Chi, right? Sure. Brother Zhu, how do we fight? Poplar Fruit smiled and nodded. It had been a long time since he went to the barracks to play. Seeing Zhu Shimin's boxing made his hands itch. Zhu Shimin and Yang Guo didn't use their full strength. They were just playing with their fists. Zhu Shimin and Yang Guo didn't use any strength. However, Zhu Shimin's boxing skills were profound, and Poplar Fruit's reactions were agile. The two of them were actually fighting back and forth, and they looked like they were fighting. However, Zhu Shimin and Poplar Fruit were still unsatisfied. Poplar Fruit suddenly suggested, Brother Zhu, you don't have to hold back. Hit me with all your strength. Will it work? It'll still hurt when I'm wearing gloves. Zhu Shimin's evaluation of Poplar Fruit's strength had reached a certain level, but he didn't think that Poplar Fruit could still fight back if he used his skills in a professional match. It's okay. You might not be able to hit me, Poplar Fruit laughed. He didn't use his boxing posture anymore. Instead, he raised his hands like a white crane spreading its wings. His body sank, and he bent his knees in a horse stance, making the starting gesture of Tai Kai you win if you touch the corner of my shirt. Poplar Fruit said with a sly smile. He looked down on others too much. The world champion Zhu Shimin was also provoked by Poplar Fruit's words. He didn't hold back anymore and went forward. However, Poplar Fruit said that he wouldn't let him get close, so he wouldn't let him get close. Poplar Fruit was like a Tai Chi master in the movies. He jumped around agilely. His body was like a willow in the wind, twisting and turning as he pleased. He completely exhausted Zhu Shimin, but he really couldn't touch the corner of Poplar Fruit's shirt. So strong. Zhu Shimin threw a punch. Poplar Fruit bent back, his whole body curled into the shape of an arch bridge. Poplar Fruit only lightly touched the ground with his hand, and his body was already like a spiral jumping sideways. The program crew was stunned and overjoyed. No matter how much of this scene was left in the program, this gimmick was definitely not small. They were already fantasizing about the audience's amazed expressions. After all, everyone said that Poplar Fruit was the people's hero. He had saved so many people, but whether he was really strong or whether he had real martial arts, it had been a mystery for more than a year. The main reason was that Poplar Fruit was too low-key. No one had really seen Poplar Fruit's skills, even the video released by the cheating county magistrate was blurry. How could there be such a good opportunity like now, with a high-definition camera recording the whole process from different angles? Moreover, there was a national touchstone like Zhu Shimin. Whether Poplar Fruit was strong or not, the audience could finally say that it was obvious for all to see. This was a happy moment. This won't do. How are you going to play if you just keep dodging? Zhu Shimin shamelessly said. In fact, he was really trying harder and harder just now. He had used all his strength, but he still couldn't touch Poplar Fruit. All right, I won't dodge anymore, Poplar Fruit said with a smile. This time, Poplar Fruit acted out a scene in front of the camera that could only be seen in movies. Zhu Shimin did not even have time to retract his attacking fist. Poplar Fruit turned sideways and pulled him. Zhu Shimin lost his balance. Then, Poplar Fruit came close and gently shook his shoulder. Zhu Shimin flew backwards without any resistance. At this moment, the program crew and the audience were dumbfounded. They thought to themselves, is this acting? But it was obviously not. So Chinese martial arts were really that magical? Some of the audience could not hold back their excitement and shouted excitedly, "Fuck Taekwondo. I want to practice Taiji Fis." However, this learning craze of ancient Chinese martial arts was not very crazy. It was only limited to a very small portion of the audience. It did not have much impact on Poplar Fruit and the program, so it was not discussed for the time being. Poplar Fruit reached out and pulled him, so Zhu Shimin did not fall. However, Poplar Fruit's martial arts really set off waves of shock in Zhu Shimin's heart. He did not expect Poplar Fruit to be so strong. He had learned martial arts before. Although he did not go deep into it, he had never seen anyone who practiced martial arts who could make him lose his resistance so easily. So, Poplar Fruit, you are the real master. I accept my loss wholeheartedly. Zhu Shimin looked at Poplar Fruit and was stunned for a while before he said with emotion. He was magnanimous in the face of defeat. Poplar Fruit laughed and said, "No, Brother Zhu. The two of us walk different paths of martial arts. There is no comparison. No, this is not an exaggeration. You are very strong. If you were to fight in a professional boxing competition, the championship belt might be yours. Of course, you also need to practice your skills." "Ha," Zhu Shi said sensitively. Poplar Fruit had restrained his strength just now, but he, who was also a master, could feel the surging power in Poplar Fruit's body. "Forget about the boxing competition. In my life, I just want to be a good teacher and then study the topics I like." Poplar Fruit laughed and said, "The most important thing is to be able to spend more time with my family and children. Life is happy." The last sentence is reasonable. Zhu Shimin and Poplar Fruit looked at each other and smiled. The two of them had different personalities, but they were quite like-minded. Their relationship had become much closer after this battle. "Teacher Yang, Teacher Zhu, are you done?" The assistant director stood next to the cameraman and looked at Poplar Fruit and the others. He asked carefully, "We still need to decorate here. What do you think?" "It's over. Haha. Go on, go on." Poplar Fruit and Zhu Shimin laughed and left the central open space of the earthen building. Chapter 1236. The two of them woke up early in the morning. After the practice, they could take a bath leisurely and then go back to find their children. Poplar Fruit and Kiki lived on the first floor, so they didn't need to go upstairs like Zhu Shimin. Poplar Fruit woke up the little princess who slept soundly last night. Kiki was still overflowing with happiness when her father suddenly came back yesterday. She squinted her sleepy eyes and pretended that she didn't want to get up, so that her father could grab her arm and lift her up before she fell down again. "Little piggy, I know you're awake." Poplar Fruit exposed the little girl. Kiki giggled and hugged her father's neck, unwilling to let go. "Papa, are we still going to do the task today?" The little girl washed up under her father's care. The cool towel made the little girl squint her eyes comfortably, but she was no longer sleepy. She held her father's hand and asked worriedly. "No." Poplar Fruit smiled. He sent the toothpaste and handed the toothbrush to Kiki. "Papa's task today is to play with you." He. The little girl smiled happily as she brushed her teeth. Her little arms waved restlessly, and she made funny faces at her father from time to time. Upstairs, Nuo Yi and Nina also woke up. They were visiting brother Kankang's house. The observant Hu Jun found that Nina was wearing her shoes inside out. Kankang heard the noise and rushed over. He took off his sister's shoes and put them back on. The father and son were rough but attentive, while the father was cold but warm, especially brother Kankang. Nina liked him very much yesterday. Today, brother Kankang helped her put on her shoes. Although the little beauty was a little shy and didn't say anything, she kept staring at the handsome big brother. Later, she even took the initiative to run to brother Kankang's big hand, but her own brother ignored her. "Get up!" Sister Pomegranate shouted through the loudspeaker. The whole Chungui brothel was no longer sleepy. The children all walked out of their rooms and were surprised to find a spectacular scene in the big open space in the middle of the earthen building. Dozens of villagers stood in the open space. If one looked down from upstairs, they would see the Axe Gang standing in the movie Kung Fu Hustle. As soon as the music started, a grand performance would begin. Clothes, clothes. Just as Poplar Fruit finished dressing his daughter, Kiki could no longer hold back and ran out of the door excitedly. Poplar Fruit rushed out and took his daughter's long hair out of his shirt pocket. He hadn't tied up his daughter's hair yet. But now, her hair was draped over her shoulders like a waterfall, hanging down to her waist, giving her a soul-stirring beauty. Big brother Kang Kang. Brother Nwoi. Big brother Dajuan. When Chichi saw her companions, she beamed with joy and ran from her father's side to her companion's side like a wisp of smoke. The children were too energetic. They started playing with Sister Pomegranate early in the morning. Sister Pomegranate couldn't catch up with the children, but the relationship between adults and children was really good. Sister Pomegranate is really popular with the children. Poplar Fruit smiled and nodded. Seeing this scene, it was hard for young Guo to guess that Sister Pomegranate had scared the children out of their wits yesterday morning. Suddenly, the music resounded throughout the whole place. It was actually Horsepole. In Poplar Fruit's surprised eyes, dozens of villagers in the middle of the square began to dance in the square. She was speechless. It turned out that this battle was just for square dancing. If it was square dancing, it would definitely be Kiki's favorite. Poor Xian Xian, who had just come down, was pulled into the square dancing team by the little sister. Little chubby Xian smiled innocently at the beautiful and bright Kiki in the morning, not knowing what had happened. Papa, Papa. The little girl was still not satisfied. She ran over energetically and pulled Poplar Fruit over. Do you want to dance? Poplar Fruit smiled and gently brushed away his daughter's sweaty hair and asked. He, but I don't know how to dance this song. Kiki pulled her father's hand and shook it. Come and play with us. Why are you all standing there? At this time, the other children were also called over by Sister Pomegranate. It doesn't matter if you don't know how to dance. You all can dance with Sister Pomegranate. Sister Pomegranate held a lollipop in her mouth and majestically stood in the front to lead the dance. Of course, she also danced with the villagers. Kiki happily followed behind Sister Pomegranate and danced. In the past, the little girl mixed in with the middle-aged women's square dancing with her god-grandmother. The little girl was not shy at all. Moreover, compared to the other little boys' uncoordinated movements and even unwilling expressions, Kiki danced very well. The little girl's waterfall-like hair swayed and danced with her light movements, making people feel happy. It turned out that square dancing could also be so beautiful. When the audience saw this scene, they all laughed. Kiki really subverted everyone's understanding of her once again. Beautiful, naive, lovely, kind, intellectual, friendly, and smart. This was the audience's understanding of Kiki's character. Even after watching the first 3 episodes of the program, the audience gave Kiki the title of Little Princess without princess syndrome. Now, it seemed that it would have to be changed again. The little girl actually liked square dancing. This point made Kiki immediately recognized and liked by the majority of middle-aged women. The little girl's fresh and lively dance movements and always sweet smile made square dancing become pleasing to the eye. Perhaps, it would be more appropriate to call her the most down-to-earth little princess. Next was the most dazzling ethnic style. Nuo Yi, who originally couldn't blend in, let go of his sister's hand and danced with joy. He shouted, I can sing, I can sing. Thus, there was a scene where Nuo Yi sang and Kiki giggled and danced at the side. If the demonic sound was blocked out and replaced with an elegant ancient style, and then Nuo Yi sang and didn't move so freely, it would really feel like a romantic drama in ancient times. Of course, the fathers didn't want to be left out. Yesterday, they learned to dance from the teacher in kindergarten. At this time, under the command of Poplar Fruit and Zhu Shimin, they all jumped into the sea. Their clumsy but loving dance made everyone convulse with laughter. The children were watching with great interest. Kang Kang, Dajuan, and Nina, who had no talent in dancing or were unwilling to join in, were clapping happily at the side. Little Fangxian twisted and turned with his sister, and his dancing posture was quite charming. Although later, the children ran to see the little rabbit, and Kiki didn't continue to dance and went to play with her friends, the surprise segment of square dancing filled the whole morning with laughter. After the square dancing, it was time to eat breakfast. The villagers in the earthen building had already prepared a super sumptuous breakfast. There was pot paste, pork floss, oyster cake, steamed rice balls, taro, and so on. There was a dazzling array of dishes, and the children were drooling. However, how could eating breakfast be a simple matter? Chapter 1237. In order to prevent General Qi Jiguang and the soldiers from having enough time to eat and recover their strength to fight the Japanese, the people of Minute Province invented pot paste. They ground rice that needed to be cooked for a long time into rice milk, and boil it with a lot of nutritious shredded meat, clams, and other ingredients to make a clear soup. The rice milk was then brushed on the pot, and very soon, a large pot of delicious and nutritious pot paste was produced. The children gathered around the stall where the villagers prepared breakfast. They listened to the village chief's introduction of the history of breakfast while smelling the fragrant pot paste and other breakfast dishes. The children might not be able to remember what the village chief said, but in their hearts, the delicious food that made them drool had left a deep impression on them. "Papa, I want to eat it so much," Kiki said. The other children also began to clamor, especially Xian Xian, whose saliva almost fell to the ground. "But I don't think it's that simple." Hu Jun shook his head and smiled. The fathers nodded in agreement, and a lot of props were brought over behind them, which reminded them of the unbearable past of the last time they did the splits on the Lurs Plateau. "Sure enough. But we can't just open our mouths to eat. If we want to eat something, we have to work hard." The village chiefs but was always so annoying. He explained the rules of the game that they were going to play next: hang the clothes on the rack, but they were not allowed to use their hands, only their feet. The fathers all protested. Who couldn't use their hands and only their feet to hang the clothes? If we use our feet to hang the clothes, can we still wear them in the future? Poplar Fruit asked with a serious smile. "That's how we hang the clothes in the earthen building," the village chief quibbled. "Then you demonstrate it, village chief." Sister Pomegranate stood on the fathers' side and defended them against the injustice. The fathers, including Poplar Fruit, began to make a fuss. It seemed that they wanted the village chief to play first. Of course, why would the village chief play? Back on the Lurs Plateau, he demonstrated the splits to the fathers and was teased by them. This time, he had learned his lesson and decisively refused with a straight face. "It's too hard." Hero Hu Jun was the oldest among the fathers. When he saw that the village chief did not comply, he deliberately said, "Then let's skip breakfast today." Although he said that, he still had to do it in the end. However, the fathers still wanted to vent their anger. However, this seemed to have convinced the children. Kiki anxiously pulled her father's hand, looked at her father pitifully, and said, Papa, but I want to eat." How could he disobey his daughter's orders? Poplar Fruit, who had been cheering with them just now, stood up with a wry smile. He cupped his hands to the fathers and said, "Brothers, I'm sorry. I have to go first." "Traitor, Yongguo, you traitor." A few fathers, especially Hu Jun, laughed out loud in a disrespectful manner. Poplar Fruit walked to the middle of the field and asked with a smile, "Village chief, I'll be able to eat the clothes as long as one is successful, right? As long as one succeeds, you can bring the little babies to choose the breakfast you want to eat," the village chief said. Come on, Papa. The little girl clapped her hands excitedly. Looking at her happy face, she was full of confidence in her father. "Uncle Poplar Fruit, come on. Uncle Poplar Fruit, come on." Xian Xian and the other older brothers also started to shout. Poor Nina could only cover her ears because of the loud noise from the older brothers. Poplar Fruit gave his daughter a thumbs up. He took off his shoes and stood on tiptoe with the other foot firmly supported on the ground. Even if Poplar Fruit swung his foot, his body was as steady as a straight line. It made people feel that Poplar Fruit was supposed to be walking with one foot, and his swinging foot was like an arm. He would not fall down. "Amazing!" Zhu Shimin exclaimed. He praised him in his heart. He is indeed a martial artist. His feet are so steady. At this moment, he realized that when Poplar Fruit fought with him just now, he might have gone easy on him. He had to admit it. Poplar Fruit steadily grabbed a piece of clothing with his right foot. The children were all watching him attentively. They stopped making noise and held their breath, as if they would blow Uncle Poplar Fruit down if they breathed too heavily. He turned around, bent his leg, and was ready to go. To be honest, Poplar Fruit was not worried at all that he could not hang the clothes, because his control of his body was beyond human understanding. Poplar Fruit thought that he could throw the clothes on the drying rack with his feet in 100 ways. However, the moment he swung his leg, Yang remembered that this was a variety show, not a sports competition. So, he confidently flung his clothes into the air. If he were to describe it in football terms, it would be as if Yang had hit a plane. A perfect beginning and a funny ending. The audience burst into laughter, and the unscrupulous fathers were also convulsing with laughter. Kiki was still seriously staring at the clothes that flew high in the air. When it landed, she said in annoyance, "Aya, it didn't work. Kiki, come, help Daddy pick up the clothes. Even if Daddy has to kick it 100 times today, I will help you earn breakfast." Poplar Fruit said with a smile, upholding the spirit of not giving up. "Okay." The Vitality girl Kiki nimbly jumped down from the chair, then ran to pick up the clothes and handed them to her father's feet. The little girl's obedient and sensible appearance made many parents envious in front of the TV. This time, Poplar Fruit certainly would not mess around. He only kicked it high, leaving some suspense, and then firmly hung it on the drying rack. "It's a success." Poplar Fruit was not surprised at all. He squatted down and let his surprised daughter pick him up. He laughed loudly. "There's breakfast to eat." The little girl was so happy that she jumped up and hugged her father. Her little face was red from laughing. She did not dare to believe it at first, but her father still gave her a super great surprise. After Poplar Fruit succeeded, he was urged by his children. The other fathers did not slack off and quickly went to compete. Kiki could happily hold her father's hand and go to the stall in the temporary kitchen to choose what she wanted to eat. Minute Province really had many delicious local delicacies. The little girl was dazzled. She opened her small hands and said, "I want to eat all of these." But she still had to choose, so under her father's suggestion, Kiki picked the most special pot paste, taro, and meat muffins and returned to the table. "Brother Nwoi, let's eat together. Good food should be shared with friends." Seeing that their father did not come, Brother Nwoi and Sister Nina sat at the side enviously. Kiki very sensibly ran to them and invited them to eat together. But Nina and I haven't finished the mission yet." Nwoi pouted and said sadly, "It's okay. I'll help you." Sister Pomegranate stood up and patted her chest. However, for the sake of the show, the village chief signaled the adults to use another method to help them. Poplar Fruit carried Nwoi and then let him kick the clothes up to dry. Finally, everyone was happy. The children and the fathers could all happily eat breakfast. Chapter 1238. Come on, Papa will tie your hair for you. After breakfast, there was a short break. Poplar Fruit called Kiki, who had been running around Nina's sister, over. Then, "Papa, I want Auntie Zheng's beautiful hair like last week's." Kiki's eyes lit up, and she happily gestured. "Here and here, there's a big heart." She was talking about the super beautiful heart-shaped hair that Zheng Yujie had braided last week with Big Motor. The hair was braided in the Bohemian style, forming a big heart-shaped hair at the back of the head. It was indeed very popular with girls. At that time, Zheng Yujie even braided one for Kiki under her strong request. However, Poplar Fruit didn't know how to braid such a complicated hair. Even if he did, time didn't allow him to do it for too long. Therefore, Poplar Fruit discussed with his daughter for a while, and then he braided a beautiful double ponytail for his daughter. Double ponytails were not tacky. Kiki's hair now reached her waist, and the long braided ponytails hung in front of her and reached her waist. The air fringe on her forehead also matched the shape of Kiki's delicate face. With a cute round straw hat, she looked extraordinarily beautiful. The little girl in the camera looked very fresh and beautiful, and her every frown and smile revealed a pure temperament. No hairstyle was ugly, and this fresh hairstyle was very suitable for Kiki. The little girl looked at herself in the mirror for a long time, and then she turned around and gave her father a sweet kiss with satisfaction, and then ran out happily. However, after a while, Kiki came back with Nina, and asked her father to braid one for her sister. "I can't braid it. Nina's hair is too short, and she was born with curly hair. Now she looks good without braiding." Poplar Fruit didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and pushed my daughter, who loved to look beautiful, out of the room. After a while, the fathers gathered in a room. This was the monitoring room, and they could monitor the camera in another room through the screen. It turned out that this time the program group had arranged another small test, and the children were asked to carry out the task of guarding the ice cream alone. In addition to the fact that the children couldn't steal the ice cream in their room, they also had to protect the ice cream and prevent the fathers, who played the role of troublemakers, from eating the ice cream. Of course, the village head wouldn't tell the children the specific details of the task. The children in the first group were Kang Kang and Shen Shen. Xuan Xuan's happy eyes when he heard that there was something delicious to eat. The fathers were all laughing. Zhu Shimin was scared before the fight even started. He smiled bitterly and said to Yang Guo, "Shen Shen definitely won't hold back." As soon as the father, Zhu, Shen Shen immediately jumped up and opened the lid to see what was inside. The fathers were all convulsing with laughter. Yang Guo couldn't help but give Zhu Shimin a smile. Sure enough, Shen Shen. However, to everyone's surprise, Shen Shen didn't succeed in stealing the ice cream in front of the righteous Kang Kang. Before the fathers left, Shen Shen had secretly eaten a small piece of soft candy. Then, under the threat of Kang Kang telling the village head, Shen Shen became well behaved. Moreover, after brother Kang Kang went out, Shen Shen didn't steal the ice cream as the fathers thought. Instead, he ran out after him. He was probably afraid that brother Kang Kang would tell the village head. Zhu Shimin said. Teacher Lin went out, so no one was looking at the ice cream. Didn't Teacher Lin eat it directly? Poplar Fruit laughed. Hu Jun didn't really care about his son's performance. He even joked, when the two of them come back, it's gone. It's over. Fortunately, the two children didn't go far. When they saw Lin Yongjian appear, they quickly came back. Moreover, the first one to block the door was Kang Kang. His performance was really good. Of course, he was much older than Shen Shen, so it was normal for him to be sensible. However, under Kang Kang's influence, Shen Shen shook his head and said that he wanted to eat the ice cream, but he had to wait for the quest first. This made the fathers praise Shen Shen. Zhu Shimin, as a father, had already given up hope, but this time, he was a little touched and said, "It's beyond my imagination." Seeing Lin Yongjian's coaxing and lying, and even using mouth movements, Poplar Fruit and the other fathers laughed and said, "Teacher Lin's acting is amazing. He's probably going to fall for it." Looking at Xuan Xuan's excited performance, Zhu Shimin was also worried. Poplar Fruit saw that he was already in front of the screen. Although he could accept his son's failure, Shen Shen was a glutton, but which father didn't want his son to perform better? Unexpectedly, Shen Shen actually followed Kang Kang. From the beginning to the end, no matter how Lin Yongjian coaxed him, he didn't touch the ice cream, bit by bit, until the village head came back. "Are you all touched? Come, here's a tissue." Poplar Fruit laughed and joked. He felt that the two fathers sitting beside him were so moved that they were about to cry. Hu Jun was a little better because he knew that Kang Kang was a principled person. It was normal for him to behave like this. But Shen Shen was different. Shen Shen really exceeded Zhu Shimin's expectations. He could resist eating and perfectly completed the mission. Although he did eat a piece of candy, it didn't hide the fact that Xuan Xuan's performance was great. Poplar Fruit also gave a thumbs up. He smiled and said to Zhu Shimin, "This child is very malleable. If he's trained well, he'll definitely be a great hero in the future." Zhu Shimin smiled and said to Poplar Fruit, "How about I give him to you as your disciple? When it comes to educating children, you're the best. When it comes to martial arts, you know it." Poplar Fruit knew traditional martial arts, and he was very good at it. Zhu Shimin also wanted his son to be his disciple. Poplar Fruit understood Zhu Shimin's words, but he didn't agree so easily. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Haha, you want to put your son under me so soon? That won't do. Your wife isn't willing. Let's talk about it when he's a little older." This was a tactful rejection, so Zhu Shimin didn't pursue it. Actually, it wasn't a complete rejection. Poplar Fruit left some leeway. He needed to consider it again and again. The show was still going on. The previous conversation between the two was a little strange, so the show crew edited it out. Next, it was Nuo Yi and Nina's turn. Poplar Fruit and Zhu Shimin, who were in charge of causing trouble, were both under great pressure. "I'm too embarrassed to do it." Poplar Fruit and Zhu Shimin smiled bitterly. Poplar Fruit said, "If Kiki finds out that I bullied Nina, she'll be angry with me." Chapter 1239. Although Lin Yongjian had used all kinds of methods, he hadn't been ruthless enough. Under the two children's insistence, he still completed the task. However, when it was Nuo Yi and Nina's turn, Poplar Fruit and Zhu Shimin, who had always been very pure and friendly to children, didn't play by the rules. The two of them used the trick of deceit. Even though Nuo Yi anxiously objected to it, they even finished the ice cream with Nina until only half of the ice cream cone was left. They successfully completed the task of being troublemakers. However, after coming out of the mission room, Poplar Fruit and Zhu Shimin were frowning. Even when they returned to the monitoring room, they still felt a little conflicted. "I feel like we've done something very bad, very bad." Poplar Fruit smiled bitterly and bumped Zhu Shimin with his shoulder. "The two children trusted us so much at the beginning, and then we took advantage of their trust in us to do something to them. Kiki will be watching TV later. She'll definitely be angry with me." Zhu Shimin and Poplar Fruit glanced at each other. They were also anxious, and their self-blame was written all over their faces. "It's okay. They've already done very well." Lin Yongjian comforted them. "If it weren't for us two bad uncles, they definitely wouldn't have eaten it," Poplar Fruit said with a bitter smile. "This is the show. It's okay." Hu Jun smiled. The two of them are really obedient. However, when Yang Guo and Zhu Shimin saw that Nina couldn't bear the village head's questioning and ran out while whimpering after he came, they both looked sad. They went to buy a cake. Hearing Nina's innocent answer, Poplar Fruit finally couldn't stand it anymore. "You guys watch first. I'll go buy a cake. Even if it's a show, we can't deceive children and hurt their heart." Poplar Fruit stood up and walked out with a bitter smile. Zhu Shimin quickly stood up and said, "Poplar Fruit, it's your daughter's turn next." "I'll go. It's okay. I said it just now, so I have to fulfill my promise. I'll go downstairs and ask where to buy the cake." Poplar Fruit ran downstairs without looking back. He had made up his mind. Whether it was a big cake or a small cake, he would buy one. After all, this was his promise as an uncle. But fortunately, when he got downstairs, a villager in the building was willing to ride a motorcycle to buy a cake for Poplar Fruit. So that Poplar Fruit of Tea had to make a trip himself. "Have they come?" When he hurriedly returned to the monitoring room, he couldn't take his eyes off his daughter's eyes. "They're here. The village chief just left," said Zhu Shimin. Now, he was relaxed. His son and himself had already performed well. Now, all he had to do was wait to see the performance of other children. Zhu Shimin smiled and asked, "Yang Guo, do you think Chichi will eat it?" "Hard to say." Poplar Fruit shook his head with a bitter smile and said, "She can't resist ice cream, cakes, Barbie dolls and other toys." The camera returned to the mission room. After the previous performance, Chichi and Big Brother Da Jun had once again teamed up to do a mission. The two children sat in front of the table and looked at each other, staring at each other. Kiki kept touching the bamboo basket. Poplar Fruit thought she wanted to eat it. "Kiki, we can't eat it." Da Jun misunderstood and waved his hand. "I know, this is a mission." Kiki touched the bamboo basket and giggled. "Touch it. It's still cool. It's so comfortable." The little girl's two ponytails were quite cute. Her eyes were curved when she smiled. She was very likable. Da Jun also listened to Kiki's words. The two of them put their hands on the bamboo basket and looked at each other with a smile. They're all great. They haven't opened it yet, Zhu Shimin explained to Poplar Fruit. Unlike the previous two groups, Xian Xian and Nuo Yi had already opened it before the troublemaker appeared. All right, it's my turn. Hu Jun stood up with a tall and sturdy body. He took a finished bottle of mineral water and walked out. I feel a little uneasy. Poplar Fruit smiled and patted Lin Yongjian's shoulder. He asked, Teacher Lin, are you worried about your son's performance? Lin Yongjian smiled and shook his head. He still looked very worried. I feel that Dajuan is the same as Kangkang, a very principled child. His performance is even better than Chichi's. Yanghua smiled faintly. To be honest, I'm the one who has no confidence in Chichi. Kiki is so obedient. You don't have confidence? Zhu Shimin asked. Poplar Fruit nodded and smiled. He said, yes, she is very obedient in front of me. But when I'm not around, it's hard to predict how she will behave. After all, she rarely goes out on missions by herself. Yesterday, Kiki had broken her arm after leaving her father. Of course, it was only a small injury. Poplar Fruit used internal energy to treat his daughter's blood clots at night. The little girl was fine when she woke up in the morning. The two children on the screen panicked because Hu Jun's heavy footsteps could be heard from afar. Big brother Da Jun, I'm scared. Seeing Da Jun leaning against the window and peeking outside, Chichi hurriedly stood up and nervously grabbed Da Jun's clothes, wanting to hide behind Da Jun Uncle Hu. Da Jun saw Hu Jun passing by outside the window, and he actually waved at him. Don't open the door. Kiki wanted to stop him, but Da Jun had already opened the door and invited the big bad wolf in. However, seeing that it was Hu Jun, big brother Kangkang's father, Kiki finally put down the big stone in her heart and giggled. The little girl's smile was as bright as the spring breeze. Her eyes were as moving as the autumn water. She laughed and said in a clear voice, listen to that thumping sound. It's not a ghost, it's him. Seeing his daughter laugh exaggeratedly because of her happiness, Poplar Fruit smiled bitterly and shook his head. He pitied her in his heart. Little idiot, it's too early for you to be happy. In the blink of an eye, Uncle Hu Jun, who looked tired, thirsty, and hot to the point that his face was red, sat down at the small table. He opened the bamboo basket abruptly and took out the hidden ice cream and candies. Aya, no, you can't eat. Kiki and Da Jun turned pale with fright. The two of them used their hands to protect the ice cream and candies. I've run out of water, I'm dying of thirst. Hu Jun said uncomfortably. Can I have some? No, you can't eat at all. As the big brother, Da Jun stepped forward and stopped Uncle Hu Jun. He said loudly, the village chief asked us to watch. No one is allowed to eat. Uncle Hu Jun's performance had completely subverted Chichi's imagination. Not only did he not act according to common sense, he even put on a look of even if you don't give it to me, I'll still force myself to eat it. He stretched out his hand and was about to grab a candy. No. Only the excited cry of a nightingale could be heard. The voice was still so clear and pleasant, but the scene on the screen shocked everyone. Chapter 1240. The camera rewound for a few seconds. Under Da Jun's protection, Hu Jun was about to reach out for a piece of candy. At this critical moment, Kiki anxiously shouted, no. Then, the fathers stared in bewilderment as the pretty and cute little girl in the camera took away the glass bowl containing the ice cream, candies, and ice cubes at lightning speed. Her actions were so fast that even the camera started to see a blur. The little girl was very anxious. She was worried that Uncle Hu Jun would be unreasonable. Then, she picked up the glass bowl and ran out in a hurry. No one had reacted yet. That cute figure disappeared from the camera. Village chief. It turned out that Kiki had already run out of the corridor. She ran quite fast and disappeared in a flash. Fortunately, there was still a cameraman following her at the staircase. However, he followed her closely and almost lost her. She ran out. Find the village chief. Zhu Shimin and Poplar Fruit could hear Kiki's crisp shouts from the surveillance room. He could not help but laugh. Poplar Fruit could not help but laugh. However, he was still a little worried about his daughter. He was afraid that she would fall while carrying so many things. Moreover, the camera lens outside was not connected to the screen. The audience could see it, but they could not. Brother Hu Jun is confused. Zhu Shimin pointed at Hu Jun, who was at a loss in the surveillance room. Finally, Kiki came back with the glass bowl. The staff must have coaxed the little girl back by saying that the weather outside was hot and the ice cream would melt. Just let me eat a little. I'm so thirsty. Hu Jun realized that the previous method did not work, so he changed to the pity card. You can't eat it. Don't eat it. Chichi and Da Jun both placed their hands on the bamboo basket, guarding this mission. When the little girl saw that Uncle Hu Jun was not as stubborn as before, she let down her guard a little. She could even smile as she emphasized seriously, the village chief said we can't eat it. Seeing the little girl tugging at Uncle Hu Jun's big arm and acting coquettishly, the audience couldn't help but laugh. They all felt that Kiki was very cute. She always had a sweet smile on her face. This also showed that she was a very optimistic child. Yes, he told us to watch. No one is allowed to move, and no one is allowed to eat. Da Jun was also very serious, and his tone was very strict. Poplar Fruit smiled and turned to look at Lin Yongjian. He originally wanted to praise Lin Yongjian, but when he saw Lin Yongjian's gratified smile, he didn't say anything else. Really? No one is allowed to move, and no one is allowed to eat? Hu Jun asked. Village head. Uncle Hu Jun is here to steal ice cream. Seeing Hu Jun's big stature, Da Jun was a little scared, so he shouted loudly. I can't beat you, but you don't want me to complain. In the monitoring room, the fathers were all laughing together. Lin Yongjian was even more gratified as he covered his forehead and laughed loudly. In the mission room, Hu Jun was so embarrassed that he was sweating profusely. Old Hu had been around for so many years, but he really couldn't handle these two children who didn't play by the rules. Big brother Da Jun, no need to shout. The village head isn't outside. I've been looking for him for a long time. Kiki giggled and said very honestly, I don't know where he went. Ah! Da Jun was a little dumbfounded. Hu Jun felt that he could still work a little harder. He continued to pretend to be pitiful. He picked up the empty bottle and used his superb acting skills to pretend, but Uncle is really thirsty. Look, my bottle is empty. It's so uncomfortable to have no water to drink in such a hot weather, so uncomfortable, so uncomfortable. Needless to say, Hu Jun was once an actor who was close to the level of a best actor. Lan Yu was nominated for the Golden Horse Award, among other things. With his acting, he looked very pitiful. Kiki was kind-hearted. She couldn't bear to see Uncle Hu Jun's uncomfortable appearance. She released the hand that was protecting the bamboo basket and said with concern, Then Uncle Hu, I'll help you ask the village head for water. With that, the little girl ran out again. Looking at her vigorous figure, she was like a cute little deer. Village head, papa, papa. However, no matter how the little girl called, no one responded. She even went to find the photographer uncle, but today was especially strange. No one had any water to drink. But when Kiki turned around and left, the weak Da Jun couldn't hold on any longer. Hu Jun only lightly tricked Da Jun, and Da Jun moved aside, allowing Hu Jun to secretly eat a piece of candy. Aya, you can't eat it, you can't eat it. When the little girl came back, she turned pale with fright. She anxiously ran back to the table and waved her hand. However, the bamboo basket had already been opened, and Uncle Hu Jun was happily chewing on the food. I don't know what to do, Zhu Shimin commented. The little girl was so anxious that she was about to cry. How can you eat it? Kiki was at a loss. She looked left and right, and then looked at Da Jun. But big brother Da Jun was also too busy to take care of himself. How could he know how to save their mission? Come, sit down first. I'll tell you. Seeing that the child was about to cry, Hu Jun hurriedly told them the strategy he had just thought of. He pointed to the candy in the big bowl. The red and green candy mixed with the ice cubes looked especially beautiful. Hu Jun said, Look, there are so many candies. If you eat one or two, will the village head be able to tell? But you're not allowed to eat it. Da Jun said. Kiki also nodded. Look, I'll eat another one. Jun stretched out his big hand again, but this time, Kiki anxiously hugged his arm. In order to not let Uncle Jun have his way, the little girl even put her body weight on it. "You're not allowed to eat it, you're not allowed to eat it." Kiki was extremely anxious. Okay, I won't eat it." Jun put the candy in Kiki's little hand and said with a smile, "Come and take a look. With this candy, can you still tell?" "I can't tell." Jun looked and nodded. He looked at Kiki and asked, "Kiki, can you tell?" "I can't tell." Kiki looked at the candy. Her hand that wasn't holding the candy was gently pinching the side of her braid. She was very conflicted in her heart as she said softly. In the monitoring room, the atmosphere was a little heavy. Poplar Fruit was also looking at his daughter with rapt attention. He wanted to know how she would perform. But this won't do. Kiki put the candy back. She waved her white little hand and pointed to the wall. She said very seriously, "You'll see. There are cameras here. There were many cameras on all 4 walls. I've seen it on TV. Big brother Kimi and big sister Angela protect the eggs, and then Papa can see it. Then, Papa won't be happy if we don't complete the task." The little girl raised her eyebrows and said very worriedly. The few fathers were so surprised that they couldn't close their mouths. Poplar Fruit was also convulsing with laughter at his daughter's performance. He shook his head and said to the village chief and the other fathers with a smile, "She's watched TV before. She's watched the 1st and 2nd seasons. We can't hide this from her. If Nuo Yi was a 10th grade scholar of the Journey to the West, then Kiki was definitely a 10th grade fan of the program. Where are we going, Dad?" Chapter 1241. Kiki, the level 10 scholar, accurately pointed out the Achilles heel of this mission. However, Jun was still very resourceful. He quickly stood up and said, These cameras are all switched off. Turned it off." Chichi followed behind Uncle Jun in puzzlement, and looked up to see. "Yes, they're switched off," Jun said in a very certain tone. He waved his hand and said, "If you don't believe me, turn it around and see if it can still move." Thus, Kiki foolishly interacted with the camera friend. Of course, the staff behind the camera had already received instructions. The camera did not move at all, as if it really was not switched on. Of course, the audience also feasted their eyes because it was rare to see the young lady standing in front of the camera so sweetly. Although she was greeting the camera, it was as if she was conversing with the audience in front of the television, and looking at her long and beautiful double ponytails. Both boys and girls liked Kiki's fresh and beautiful new hairstyle. "It really isn't switched on." Kiki returned to the table. At this time, Jun started eating again. Although Kiki glanced at him, she did not appear as anxious as before. "Right. Then if we eat like this, no one will notice." Jun patted his chest and said confidently, Come, let's eat together. You eat too. The village chief won't notice." Jun said. Jun really reached out to eat one. Kiki looked at him and could not help but swallow her saliva. The young lady looked like she wanted to eat but did not dare to eat. She was cute and pitiful. "Is it good?" Jun asked Jun nodded. Since one was already dragged into the water, Jun turned to ask Kiki, "Kiki, don't you want to eat?" The young lady licked her lips with her pink tongue and said hesitantly, "I want to eat, but what?" "It's okay. The village chief can't tell after eating a few." "Look, I'm eating again." Jun guided her. "Can you tell?" "You can't tell. I want to eat ice cream." The little girl still didn't play by the rules. She was talking about candy, but now she wanted to eat ice cream. However, the little girl really wanted to eat it. Just now, she had been sneaking glances at the ice cream. Now that Pandora's box was opened, her desire was written all over her face. "It's over, the mission has been lost." Poplar Fruit shook his head with a smile. In fact, his daughter did a great job, but it was very difficult to make Kiki give up the idea of eating ice cream. Poplar Fruit knew that it was very difficult for the little girl to resist delicious snacks such as cakes and ice cream, even if he was by her side. "Ice cream won't do. There's only one ice cream." The village chief will find out after eating it. Da Jun grabbed a candy and put it into his mouth. Why don't you have some candy too? I want to eat ice cream. Kiki pouted when she saw that everyone was eating, but she couldn't eat what she wanted. Sure, why not? I'll teach you. Hu Jun, the bad uncle, continued to teach the child bad things. You see, such a big ice cream, if you lick it a little, no one will be able to tell that it has been eaten, right? Can I? Kiki couldn't help but lick her small tongue and looked at Uncle Hu Jun longingly. She wanted to get his permission because Uncle Hu Jun was an adult. It's over, it's over. Zhu Shimin laughed. At this moment, the monitoring room was silent. Poplar Fruit was still laughing. He didn't have high expectations for his daughter. Her previous performance was enough to satisfy him. However, Lin Yongjian couldn't laugh. His expression was a little tangled. So, everyone saw that under Hu Jun's instigation, Kiki grabbed her two pigtails and stretched her neck to lick the ice cream that looked very sweet and delicious. Hee hee, hee hee. Kiki still felt a little embarrassed because she seemed to have done something bad, so she hid behind Hu Jun. Da Jun saw this and also hid. The two children were like instant noodles, stealing and hiding after eating. Let me discuss with you. Hu Jun still wanted to be a good person. He said, since we have already eaten, let's eat happily. When the village chief comes, he will tell us where these things have gone. Hu Jun wanted the children to learn to be brave and bear the consequences of their mistakes. However, he didn't think about the children's tolerance. At this time, Kiki couldn't help but lick the ice cream for the second time. Then, she hid behind Hu Jun. She felt that doing something bad this time was very exciting. Uncle Hu Jun became like one of them and they were much closer. She climbed behind Hu Jun and played with him. I didn't eat it. Da Jun suddenly interrupted Hu Jun's words. At this time, Lin Yongjian's expression froze. The audience saw his throat move. Teacher Lin, who was very traditional in educating children, was obviously angry because of Da Jun's word. If we don't tell the village chief, are we lying? Did you lie? Hu Jun seemed to have forgotten the words he had just said to the children and asked. I don't want to tell him. Da Jun's whole body was tense, especially his worried and scared eyes. I'm afraid, if I tell him, it will make Papa angry. Chichi nervously hugged Hu Jun's wrist with her two little hands, and her expression also became nervous and worried. Looking at the little girl's delicate and pretty little face that was as delicate and pitiful as jade, the audience felt a bit of heartache. They felt that in this segment, Hu Jun was a little too cruel to the two children. No. I think it's better to tell the truth than to lie, Hu Jun said patiently and slowly. Since we did something wrong, we have to have the courage to admit that we did something wrong. Hu Jun's teaching method was actually very good. He set an example by holding the candy and said, now, you see, I can still eat it. I can eat it openly. I want to eat it too. Kiki looked at Hu Jun with a little desire. That ice cream was really tempting to her. She stretched out her little finger and gently touched the ice cream. Then, she put it in her mouth and licked it. She squinted her eyes and smiled sweetly like a kitten. You want to eat it? Then you have to be careful. When the village chief comes and asks you, what will you say? Hu Jun asked. Tell them. Just tell them. The little girl's voice was lowered a little. She was obviously still a little nervous, but she had already become very calm. Hu Jun's teaching had a little effect. Actually, if she's honest, I won't scold her. Poplar Fruit's somewhat unhappy face recovered a little bit of gratification. He slightly smiled and said, but I will analyze it with her. After all, she still did something wrong. It's good to have the courage to bear the responsibility, but she also needs to know her mistakes and change. However, Lin Yongjian still did not loosen his tightly knitted brows. Because, when Hu Jun asked Da Jun's expression was still tense. He did not cry, but he was not far from crying. Don't want to say. Chapter 1242. Why don't you say it? Hu Jun was still very patient. He chatted with the children for a longer time than the other three fathers. However, Da Jun shook his head and didn't say the reason. His face, which was as white as an egg, was very dignified at the moment, as if something terrible was going to happen. Quick, cover it. Don't let the village head find out. Da Jun was a little flustered under Hu Jun's questioning. He still couldn't figure out one thing in his mind. Hu Jun just said that it didn't matter, the village head wouldn't find out, but why did he want him to confess now? I know why, do you want to know? Kiki, who was still playing on Hu Jun's back, poked out her little head from Hu Jun's shoulder and said, "Why?" "Because he is afraid. Brother Da Jun is afraid that his papa will scold him." The little girl was very smart. "Aren't you afraid?" Hu Jun asked. "I'm afraid too." Kiki lowered her head and played with the end of her braid. She looked at Hu Jun with a little worry and said, "But, Papa doesn't like me to be dishonest." "You still don't want to say it?" Hu Jun turned his head and looked at Da Jun. He thought that after hearing that his sister was so sensible, he should be enlightened. However, Da Jun still shook his head and said a little timidly, "I'm afraid. Kiki is really sensible," Zhu Shimin said to Poplar Fruit. Yanggua shook his head. His smile was unnatural as he said, "No, she's just trying to be clever. She chose the lesser of two evils, but after all, she still made a mistake." At this time, Hu Jun was about to leave. The two children were a little flustered, especially Kiki. She seemed to have lost her backbone. She pitifully held Hu Jun's hand and said, "Don't go." But later, Hu Jun left, leaving a light sentence, "You go back first, guard that, and don't let anyone eat it." "Okay." Kiki agreed. She was relatively relaxed, because since she was a child, her father rarely lost his temper with her. At most, he would talk to her with a straight face. However, Da Jun leaned against the corridor and looked outside with a solemn expression. Even when Kiki was talking to him, she was absent-minded. "Big brother Dajuan, let's go back, we can't let others steal it." Kiki went to pull brother Dajuan's hand. The little girl was still smiling brightly, trying to arouse brother Dajuan's emotions. Da Jun was unhappy and was dragged back to the room by Kiki. Seeing that Lin Yongjian's expression was as serious as his son's, Poplar Fruit patted Lin Yongjian's shoulder and said, "Teacher Lin, Dajuan is very sensible. At least he knows to be afraid of doing something bad, unlike Kiki. This little guy is not afraid of anything." Poplar Fruit smiled bitterly. He had to reflect on whether he had spoiled his daughter too much sometimes. Of course, if he really wanted to scold his daughter, Poplar Fruit really couldn't do it. No matter what she did wrong, Poplar Fruit couldn't bear to hit his daughter. Lin Yongjian didn't say anything. He stared at the screen and saw that Da Jun ran out again, probably because he heard the village chief's footsteps. Kiki walked around the house twice and followed him out. However, when she came back, she was only following behind the village chief. Da Jun was nowhere to be seen. Where did Da Jun go? This was a problem. However, Kiki had to face the village chief's inspection first. "Village chief, where did you go just now? I couldn't find you." Although she said that, from the little girl's hands unintentionally fiddling with her braids, it was obvious that she was guilty. Poplar Fruit was very attentive. He wanted to see how his daughter would behave. Of course, the beginning wasn't good because Kiki didn't confess at the beginning. She still had a little bit of luck. "You've taken a look at the ice cream and those delicious things, right?" The village chief walked in and went straight to the small table. He then pulled up the bamboo basket to check. At that moment, Kiki's face was tense. She didn't even dare to breathe loudly. She didn't even know where to put her hands. "Sigh, it's pretty good. There's nothing wrong at all. It's pretty good." The village chief's words surprised Kiki. She was already prepared to confess honestly. However, at that moment, the little girl wavered. Confess or lie? At that moment, a little rascal added fuel to the fire in Kiki's heart. She looked at the village chief helplessly. Even when the village chief praised her, the little girl's pretty face didn't smile. Poplar Fruit looked through the screen and frowned slightly. Whether it was the monitoring room or the mission room, the house was quiet. The atmosphere was a little heavy. "Where's Da Jun? Where did Da Jun go? Let's find him and bring him back, okay?" the village chief said. This sentence broke the heavy atmosphere. However, it also caused the uneasy Kiki to misunderstand. She might have thought that the village chief was going to find Big Brother Da-jun to vent his anger. Village chief, village chief. The little girl hurriedly blocked the village chief who was about to leave. She nervously pulled the village chief's hand and said with a little grievance, "Sorry, I lied to you." Hey! Poplar Fruit's eyebrows raised slightly. "What lie did you tell?" the village chief asked. The village chief's tone was quite gentle. It eased Kiki's nervous expression a little. It's that we didn't complete the mission." Kiki shook the village chief's hand. She looked at the village chief pitifully and said, "Uncle Hu-jun came over. We ate some sweets and ice cream." Although she was still worried that the village chief would be angry, Kiki looked a lot more relaxed after saying the words that she kept in her heart. It was better to confess and have a clear conscience. Only then would she not be in a bad and uneasy mood. "Oh, you ate sweets and cake?" the village chief asked. "But I didn't see any changes. Because there were a lot of sweets, I couldn't tell." Kiki pulled the village chief's hand. Her little eyes looked very pitiful as she said, "I was worried that you would be angry, so I didn't dare to say it." "Uncle Village Chief, don't be angry, okay?" To be honest, looking at such a fresh and lovely little girl's pitiful appearance, no one would be able to get angry at her. "The village chief is very happy that you were able to tell him that you did wrong. Why would he be angry at you?" The village chief smiled and said, "Then what about Da-jun? Did he eat anything?" This question made the panting Kiki nervous again. Her two little hands grabbed the end of her braid and twisted it in front of her chest. She hesitated for a moment. In that instant, two images flashed through her mind. One was Big Brother Da-jun's expression when he was so scared that he was about to cry. The other was the scary look on Big Brother Da-jun's father when he lost his temper in Shishan. Big Brother Da-jun didn't eat. Kiki's words shocked all the fathers in the monitoring room. Chapter 1243. Brother Da-jun didn't eat it. Kiki's answer shocked the adults, including Hu-jun, who had just returned to the surveillance room. Hu-jun chuckled and said, "This child is not bad. She's loyal." The village chief smiled and patted the little girl who had become nervous because of her good friend. He said gently, "Good, your attitude of admitting your mistake is excellent. However, let's find Da-jun first, okay?" She knew that her good friend had hidden out of fear, but Kiki didn't know where Brother Da-jun had run off to. Thus, the two of them began to rummage through the cabinets to find Da-jun. This kid, where did he run off to? In the surveillance room, Lin Yongjian's expression was unhappy. He harumphed with a straight face. "His hiding," Hu-jun said with a smile. "We must let the village chief find him. We'll see what he says when he finds him." Facing the camera, Lin Yongjian couldn't even squeeze out a smile. Poplar Fruit was also silent. He was thinking about the problem his daughter had exposed during the test. "Brother Da-jun, where are you?" The little girl's crisp voice echoed in the corridor. "Da-jun, you completed the mission well," the village chief said from afar. He knew where Da-jun was because the cameraman was standing at the place where Da-jun was hiding. Hearing that the village chief didn't blame him, Da-jun was delighted and quickly climbed out of his hiding place. "Brother Da-jun, you're here." Kiki happily went up to hug Da-jun's arm. She was very excited to see her friend again. She had been looking for him for a long time and was worried sick. Back in the house, the village chief sat down and let the two children sit on either side. He said, "Come, let's give a review of today's mission." Today's mission. The village chief wants to act out Kiki. Under the circumstances where the village chief didn't notice that the candies were missing, Kiki confessed to the village chief that she had eaten ice cream and candies, right? "Yes, we won't do it again." The little girl admitted her mistake honestly. She was sitting upright, just like what the teacher in kindergarten asked her to do in class. The serious little girl was like a small obedient student. She was quite cute. However, Da-jun became nervous. He was a little confused. Didn't the village chief say that he had completed his mission very well? Why did he say that his younger sister had already confessed? What about Da Jun? The village chief turned his head to look at Da Jun, who was sitting beside him with an uneasy and pale face. He gave him a slight smile, but didn't immediately continue speaking. Big brother Dajuan didn't eat. Kiki was a little surprised that the village head didn't speak according to what they had just said. She looked at Da Jun's nervous and sweaty face and hurriedly pulled the village head's hand and said, "That's not good." Poplar Fruit shook his head and commented, she shouldn't cover up her friend's mistake. For such a young child to be able to do this is already not bad. You're very loyal. Even us adults might not be able to do that. Zhu Shimin patted Poplar Fruit's shoulder and said, "Right, we also have to praise Dajuan here because you were able to persevere from the beginning to the end. This kind of spirit is worth learning from," said village chief. He spoke slowly, but he was paying attention to Da Jun's expression. Actually, under the camera, the change in Da Jun's expression was very clear. After Kiki said that he took responsibility for all the mistakes, Da Jun was obviously stunned for a moment, then he heaved a sigh of relief. He looked at Kiki gratefully. Then, looking at his expression, he also wanted to continue hiding it. However, the village head's praise made Da Jun's smile slowly disappear. The little boy was worried that the village head and his father would be angry and wanted to make a choice to lie. But after he received the village head's praise, Da Jun felt a little embarrassed. He knew in his heart that this was wrong and he shouldn't be praised. Uneasy in his heart, the kind Da Jun suddenly had tears in his eyes. "Village head." Da Jun rubbed his eyes. His voice was a little panicked as he said, "Village head, I want to be honest with you." "Oh, be honest about what?" The village head was very pleased. He encouraged Da Jun with his eyes. I'm not as good as you said." Wiping away his tears, Da Jun muttered in a low voice, just now Uncle Hu Jun came. Then we ate a lot of candies. I also ate some. But he also admitted it. Hu Jun said with a smile in the monitoring room. The method is different, but he also admitted it. Hu Jun said this to Lin Yongjian, who had an ugly expression just now. Poplar Fruit and Lin Yongjian actually didn't care about what the two children said to the village head and what the village head said to them. So much so that after the village head left, Kiki let out a big sigh of relief. She even mischievously pouted her little mouth and softly twisted her two slender little arms like a snake. This adorable look made the fathers in the monitoring room laugh out loud. But Poplar Fruit shook his head while laughing. They actually wanted this to end quickly so that they could go and talk to their children. Poplar Fruit was also the same. Although Kiki, this little girl, was as loyal as a boy, and even received a lot of praise from netizens on the internet, Poplar Fruit still saw some bad signs from his daughter's performance. Lin Yongjian was the first to go out. Poplar Fruit also couldn't hold back and followed him. He took his daughter's little hand downstairs and returned to the door of his room. "Papa." Poplar Fruit's dignified look made Kiki keenly feel that the little girl was somewhat anxious. She held her father's hand and didn't dare to let go. When they came down just now, Lin Yongjian had already begun to scold Da Jun loudly at the stairs. Kiki was very afraid that her father would also be angry. At the door, Poplar Fruit found a chair and sat down. Kiki wanted to throw herself into her father's arms. She wanted to use her well-tested coquettish move to ease her father's taut face. However, Poplar Fruit didn't allow her to throw herself over. He grabbed her arms with both hands and blocked her in front of him a little coldly. "Papa, I know I was wrong. Don't be angry." With Kiki's intelligence, how could she not know that her father knew? But she was really afraid of her father's anger. She was afraid of her father's indifference. The little girl was very flustered and wanted to throw herself into her father's arms. Her big eyes began to fill with tears. How could he bear to let his daughter cry? Poplar Fruit's heart softened. He opened his arms and let his daughter throw herself in. Poplar Fruit gently stroked the back of his daughter, who was rubbing her eyes and crying. His voice returned to its gentle state. He said, "Well, Papa is not very angry." Kiki rubbed her eyes and stopped crying. But she still reluctantly leaned into her father's arms. "But Papa wants to have a good talk with you about your performance just now. Is it right or wrong?" "Papa is not angry, But Papa wants you to clearly recognize your mistakes. Okay. Poplar Fruit asked softly. Kiki nodded obediently. Chapter 1244. Seeing his daughter nodding obediently, Poplar Fruit smiled. His originally angry and anxious heart also calmed down. But the necessary communication and small punishment were still necessary. Do you know why Daddy is angry? Poplar Fruit let his daughter lean on his body and asked softly. Because I ate the prize. Kiki nodded and said with a pout. Although she admitted her mistake, she still felt a little wronged. There was no reason to feel wronged. Perhaps it could be said that she felt wronged because her father was angry with her, even if she was really wrong. This was a child's nature. No one was willing to be scolded, no one was willing to be pointed out their mistakes. Even if they knew they were wrong, they would find a way to escape. Kiki was a girl. She had the right to feel wronged. However, what made Poplar Fruit gratified was that she was still able to endure and listen to her father's reasoning. Anything else? Poplar Fruit asked softly. Kiki looked at her father in confusion. She didn't know what else she did wrong. Well, Daddy will start with this ice cream, okay? Poplar Fruit smiled slightly. Seeing his daughter was a little unhappy, he slightly changed his tone. Of course, Daddy is not saying that your performance today was not good. There were mistakes, but there were also things that you did well. For example, at the beginning, when Uncle Hu-jun wanted to eat candy, you refused. You even took that big bowl and ran far away. Poplar Fruit laughed and said, seeing that you were so powerful that even Uncle Hu-jun couldn't catch up with you, Daddy laughed very happily at that time. Aya, Uncle Hu-jun lied. That camera was on, woo-woo. Kiki shyly covered her little face. She was still very nervous, but after hearing her father's praise, her mood became better again. The little girl was still very mischievous and playful with her father. She stretched out her little hand and wanted to cover her father's eyes. Her face was bright red. Now you know how to be shy. Poplar Fruit waited for her to play for a while. Then, he smiled and continued, but now, let's talk about what you did wrong. Kiki blinked her big eyes and looked at her father. You performed well in the beginning. But, as soon as you heard Uncle Hu-jun say that the camera was off, you did something wrong. This time, Poplar Fruit said to his daughter in a serious tone, behave yourself in front of people and behind their backs. There are cameras. When you know that Daddy is watching you, you will behave well. Without the camera and without your father by your side, you started to be disobedient. Am I right? Poplar Fruit asked. Kiki didn't dare to laugh anymore. She lowered her head and secretly raised her eyelids to look at her father. In a soft voice, she said, yeah, why did you not dare to eat the ice cream when you thought that Dad might see you through the camera, but when there's no camera, you wanted to eat it? Poplar Fruit asked gently. I'm afraid that Papa will be angry. Kiki squeezed her head into her father's arms. The little girl felt a little embarrassed, as if her scars were being uncovered layer by layer. Dad won't be angry. If you only eat the ice cream, Dad will only think that you are too naughty. But if you think that Dad will be angry and then secretly eat the ice cream after avoiding Dad, Dad will be very sad. Poplar Fruit held his daughter's hand, pressed it to his heart, and said softly, because Dad will think that my daughter is afraid of Dad. I don't want Papa to be sad. Hearing her father's gentle but straightforward words, Kiki was suddenly full of tears. She pouted and sobbed. At this time, she really regretted it. Dad is very happy that you can think like this. But Dad wants to tell you a truth. Poplar Fruit smiled and held his daughter's little face. He said, doing things is not for others to see. Dad doesn't need you to do things that you don't like to do for Dad's happiness. But no matter what decision you make, you have to do it with a clear conscience. The ice cream is delicious, but let's think about it. Watching the ice cream was the task that the village chief assigned to you. You ate the ice cream. Whether Dad and the village chief found out or not, you didn't fulfill the promise you made to the village chief. You also failed to live up to everyone's trust in you. After eating the ice cream, do you feel very uncomfortable in your heart? Do you feel guilty? Poplar Fruit said. Kiki sobbed and said, Papa, I told the village chief that I did something wrong. I won't dare to do it again. Dad saw it. You know your mistake and change. This is a good child. Poplar Fruit said, this is where Dad wants to praise you, because you did confess to the village chief. However, Dad thinks that when you confess, you are not sincere enough. Because you didn't take the initiative to confess to the village chief, and you still have the idea of getting lucky. Kiki found that she had nowhere to hide her thoughts in front of her father. She could only pout her mouth and nod her head in grievance. This is the second thing that Dad wants to teach you today. Poplar Fruit smiled slightly, so that his daughter's face would not be too tense. He gently rubbed his daughter's little head that was leaning on him and said, no matter when, doing something wrong is not terrible. What is terrible is that you don't have the courage to take responsibility. What is terrible is that you don't learn from it. What is terrible is that you think that apologizing is enough, but you don't make the effort to change. Kiki nodded. Poplar Fruit would not care how much Kiki would change after this experience, but he wanted his daughter to remember these principles. When she grew up and became more mature, she would be able to understand. Dad also saw that you wanted to help Brother Darjuan, so you took the initiative to tell the village chief about the candy you ate, right? Poplar Fruit smiled and asked. Kiki nodded. She pulled her father's finger, swung it, and said, yes, Brother Darjuan was very afraid that his father would scold him. So you are willing to take all the responsibility for him? Even if the village chief punishes you? Poplar Fruit asked. I don't want Brother Darjuan to be sad. Kiki nodded. Dad is actually very gratified that you think this way, because you know how to help your good friend. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, but this does not mean that Dad agrees with your way of doing things. Do you know why? Kiki did not understand. Looking at her confused big eyes, Poplar Fruit analyzed to his daughter, because you helped Brother Darjuan escape responsibility in this kind of thing. From another point of view, did you also make him lose the chance to change? But Brother Darjuan's father will scold him. He is very fierce. Kiki took her father's hand and said with compassion. But Brother Darjuan's father scolded him. Is it for his own good? Poplar Fruit smiled and looked at his daughter. After thinking for a long time, he nodded and continued, although the method is not appropriate, Brother Darjuan also needs to grow from mistakes, don't you think so? Chapter 1245. Third update, one more chapter. This is also the third truth that Dad wants to talk about. You can't cover up the mistakes of good friends. Good friends not only share good things together, but also have to bear, correct, and improve together when we do something wrong, right? Poplar Fruit said to Kiki. Kiki nodded as if she understood. Just like before, Poplar Fruit didn't need her to understand these truths that adults might not understand. Actually, Dad just asked an uncle in the earthen building to help buy a cake for all the children to eat together. Poplar Fruit suddenly changed the topic and said, at that time, Dad told him that he wanted to buy a hazelnut cake, which is my daughter's favorite. It was obvious that Chichi's eyes had become bright and sparkling all of a sudden. However, Chichi was also holding her father's hand a little fearfully. Because her father had pointed out so many things she had done wrong, she looked at her father with a pitiful gaze, afraid that her father would turn around and say that he wouldn't let her eat anymore. You just did something bad. Poplar Fruit deliberately dragged his voice. The little girl immediately pouted, but she actually understood that the attack that was more effective than the attack of tears was actually the attack of acting coquettishly. The little girl immediately turned around and hugged her father's neck, hanging herself on her father's neck like a sandbag. She also jumped and moaned. Her voice was so soft that it made people's hearts melt. After a while, she also freed her small hands and pinched her father's mouth, squeezing it like Donald Duck, not letting her father speak. The little girl looked at her father pitifully, twisted her small waist, and said, Papa, I want to eat it. I know that I'm wrong. Do you really know that you're wrong? Poplar Fruit asked with a smile on his face. I really know. The little girl nodded her head like a rattle drum, and her two ponytails swayed. It's not enough to know that you're wrong, Poplar Fruit deliberately said with a straight face. If you do something wrong, then you have to be punished. Woo-woo, don't Tilda. Chichi pouted and anxiously pulled her father's hand and shook it. But Poplar Fruit deliberately wanted to give his daughter a big turnaround. He couldn't help but grin. In view of your positive attitude and positive attitude, Dad thinks that this cake. Her father's voice was still dragging, but Chichi couldn't wait to start beaming with joy. Don't be happy so quickly. This bad father made Kiki nervous again, and then smiled mischievously. You can't escape death, but you can't escape punishment. Dad has a small punishment for you before we share the cake. Chichi hurriedly nodded. She looked at her father pitifully. She wasn't afraid of punishment, but she was afraid of not having cake to eat. This little foodie, who was no less than Xianxian, was also worried that her father would suddenly go back on his word and not let her eat the cake. Okay, bad father played enough. Poplar Fruit gently pulled his daughter to stand up and let her stand facing the wall. He then pressed his daughter's shoulder and said softly, Dad wants you to stand here. Put your hands down, stand straight, and don't move. Kiki nodded, but it was obvious that she wasn't very used to it, because this was the first time in 4 years that her father punished her to stand. It wasn't that the little girl didn't know that punishment was to stand. In kindergarten, teachers would punish naughty and disobedient children by making them stand. This was not corporal punishment, but a very common way of education in China and abroad. However, Kiki was very obedient in kindergarten, and the punishment never fell on her head. This time, her father punished her to stand. Although Kiki was willing to accept the punishment for the sake of the cake, the little girl was still a little sad, and felt that she had become a bad child in kindergarten that everyone disliked. Looking at his daughter's lowered head, her eyes red, and her chest rising and falling, Poplar Fruit didn't feel good either. He gently tucked his daughter's scattered hair behind her ear and asked, Do you know why Dad wants you to stand here? Stand. Kiki nodded. The little girl's voice was a little choked up. Yes, you are. But I hope that you can stay here, face the wall, and quietly think about what I said just now and your performance in the mission. Poplar Fruit patted his daughter's shoulder. Everyone makes mistakes, even Dad. But we all need to reflect on ourselves often to improve. Dad did something wrong today, but Dad has corrected and made up for it, so Dad wants you to think about it and be a better child, okay? Poplar Fruit asked. Kiki nodded. The little girl was very obedient and didn't continue to be depressed. Although her head was still lowered, her eyes were no longer as red as before. Good girl. Poplar Fruit smiled and walked away from his daughter. It wasn't that Poplar Fruit didn't want to watch from the side, but at the entrance of the earthen building, the villager who helped him buy the cake had returned. Just as Poplar Fruit said to his daughter, he did do something wrong today. He didn't coax Nina to eat ice cream, but lied to her that he would buy the cake, taking advantage of Nina's love and trust for him. This made Poplar Fruit feel guilty. He had done something wrong, so he should make up for it. Therefore, he asked the villager friend to help him ride the motorcycle to the town's cake shop to buy the cake. However, Poplar Fruit didn't know that less than 2 minutes after he turned around, a curious little boy ran to Kiki's side. It was Nuo Yi, the only boy Kiki had kissed since she participated in this program. Of course, that was all Belle's fault. Nuo Yi's mind was always a little offline, and he would always say something that people couldn't make sense of. However, it had to be said that this optimistic and humorous little boy was very good at coaxing girls. He ran to Kiki with bared fangs and brandished claws, and asked with a smile, Why aren't you talking? Are you a blockhead? Who are you? The little boy hugged my daughter's neck and looked at each other. The pure and sunny smile in the little boy's eyes dispelled the last bit of grievance in my daughter's eyes, and brought a happy smile. My daughter pursed her lips, and her smiling eyes were like a clear spring. Her white and rosy cheeks were like shy peach blossoms, and she was so cute. Phut, brother Nuo Yi tilde Kiki couldn't help but laugh. She said with slight annoyance, My papa told me to stand as punishment. Why did you stand? Nuo Yi asked curiously. I did very well in the beginning, but I didn't do well in the end. Chichi explained softly. Although her reflection had been interrupted, at least she had a little friend who could listen to her talk. Perhaps the little girl would be able to understand more through communication. In the camera, the two of them were innocent. Under the bright and beautiful sun, the flower of friendship was happily blooming. Chapter 1246. After buying the cake, Nina had already forgotten what had happened just now. She was having a good time with the director. Nina, look, what's this in your uncle's hand? However, Yangwa appeared in front of her from afar with the cake in her hands. She smiled and showed off the cake box. Nina then ran over in surprise and joy. It's a cake. Nina giggled and reached out to grab Poplar Fruit's hand. She was so happy that she jumped up and down. There's a cake. Several children rushed over excitedly from all directions. They really didn't know where they were playing just now. As soon as they heard that there was delicious food, they ran out. The one running at the front was little Pangxian with curly hair. I want to eat cake. I want to eat cake too. The children shouted excitedly. Xian was dancing with joy. Poplar Fruit looked at his daughter, who was still standing there obediently. Although the little girl was eager to cheer with her friends, she was now being punished by her father. She could only stand pitifully far away. Kiki, that's enough. Come and eat the cake together. In fact, Poplar Fruit was very satisfied with his daughter's performance. He smiled and waved to her. The little girl's grievance immediately turned into joy. She turned her head and ran over cutely like a deer. Her beautiful twin ponytails swayed behind her, just like her mood at the moment. Kiki, there's cake to eat. Nuo Yi and her friends held hands and the two children giggled. The children's joyous mood even affected Kangkang, who had always been aloof. He stood aside reservedly, grinning from ear to ear. Taking advantage of the lively atmosphere, Sister Pomegranate cut the cake for them. Then, Poplar Fruit and the other fathers urged their children to share the cake and the joy with the other children in the earthen building. I want to eat too. Little Pangxian anxiously wanted to eat first. There's enough for you to eat. Look, Uncle Poplar Fruit bought such a big cake. Zhu Shimin comforted his foodie son, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. As for Kiki, after sending 2 plates of cake to the young lady in the earthen building, she licked the cream on her hands and ran to her father happily. She said sweetly, Papa, the cake is so delicious. Little greedy cat. Looking at his daughter licking her fingers, Poplar Fruit couldn't help but laugh. After eating the cake, they listened to the village chief's evaluation of the children's performance. Of course, the one who performed the best was Kangkang. The principled little boy did not touch the prize that he needed to protect from the start to the end. He even stopped and led his companions, allowing little chubby Xian to successfully complete his task. Although the little boy didn't seem to care, he was still very proud of himself. Looking at the way he held his head high and his little sister's worshipful eyes, he couldn't help but smile coldly. Poplar Fruit just pressed his daughter's shoulder and stood calmly. He didn't say anything. He had just said what he needed to say to his daughter. If he asked her to look at others now, it would easily trigger his daughter's rebellious emotions. Moreover, in front of so many friends, Poplar Fruit was still willing to give face to his daughter. No one wanted to be lectured by their father in front of their good friends, right? On the other side, Lin Yongjian's temper eased a little. He just scolded his son, and when he returned to the monitoring room angrily, Hu Jun analyzed the situation with him. Recalling what Poplar Fruit said to him during the last trip, Lin Yongjian regretted it. You were too anxious. When educating the child, this method is not acceptable to him. Later, when Lin Yongjian was interviewed by the program team, he said. Lin Yongjian also confessed his thoughts. He was actually a traditional Chinese father, and a father who had a strong love for his child. Seeing the other children perform so well, Lin Yongjian felt anxious for his son. It really wasn't a matter of caring about his face. Lin Yongjian was very sincere. He was worried that Da Jun didn't do well and said the wrong thing. After all, this was a television program for a national audience. If there were any small flaws, it would be easy for people to criticize with a magnifying glass. Da Jun was a child who wasn't even 5 years old. Lin Yongjian was worried that his son wouldn't be able to withstand the criticism. However, his anxiety didn't yield good results. Lin Yongjian also began to reflect on himself. After he returned, he repeatedly watched the video of Poplar Fruit criticizing Kiki and communicating with Kiki. It's still the case that I spend less time with my child and communicate less. Lin Yongzhen said sincerely. In the future, it's better to spend more time with your child and communicate more with him. It was rare to see a father like Lin Yongzhen who was willing to reflect on himself and improve himself. However, most of the time, he only saw his shortcomings. Don't forget, he's also a man in his 40s. A leopard can't change its spots. We need to give him more time and patience. Not long after, the village chief began to announce the start of the next segment. The place we live in is called Nanjing. The people in Nanjing especially like to eat bamboo shoots. After we arrive here today, we'll have everyone prepare a full bamboo shoot banquet together, the village chief said. Very good, very good. Poplar Fruit rubbed his hands together. He was in high spirits. Last time, it was actually making noodles. No matter how good his culinary skills were, he couldn't handle the noodles in the north. This time, they were in Minute Province. Poplar Fruit thought that no matter how difficult it wouldn't be too difficult. Minute Province's cuisine was a southern cuisine. It should be his turn to show off his skills, right? After drawing a mission card, Poplar Fruit patted his daughter's shoulder confidently and said with a smile, "Go, Kiki. Go draw one. Daddy will make you a feast this time." The little girl ran over happily and then took out an envelope. She opened it and her eyes lit up. She waved the task card in her little arms and happily threw herself back into her father's arms, saying, "Papa, Papa, this is what I like to eat." "What is it?" Poplar Fruit bent down and picked up his daughter's mission card with hope. He was dumbfounded when he looked at it. "It's steamed buns." "Papa, I like to eat barbecued pork buns," Kiki said sweetly. "It's not barbecued pork buns. It's bamboo shoot buns." Poplar Fruit wanted to cry but had no tears. "Are you kidding me? Why is it noodles again?" Poplar Fruit really didn't know how to make noodles. Although he did research on the ratio of flour and water used to make noodles after he went back last time, he didn't have the habit of eating noodles at home. There was no need to spend a lot of time making noodles. Besides, sometimes the noodles at home were not the ones in the north. They were egg noodles that could be bought in the supermarket. The cooking method was not something Poplar Fruit could easily learn. It was enough to fail once on noodles. Why is there another steamed bun? Poplar Fruit suddenly felt that life was hopeless. "Haha, Poplar Fruit, you're actually a bamboo shoot bun." The village chief came over and took a look. He knew Poplar Fruit's weakness, so he decisively added a stab and said with a smile, "We have stewed pig's stomach with bamboo shoots, dried pig's feet with bamboo shoots, shredded bamboo shoots, chilled green bamboo shoots, and only your bamboo shoot bun is noodle." Chapter 1247. Poplar Fruit looked at the village chief bitterly. He was on the verge of breaking down, but he had to do it even if he had tears in his eyes. Kiki was very happy because she really liked to eat steamed buns in the morning. Poplar Fruit smiled when he saw how happy the little girl was. He didn't continue to argue about the bamboo steamed buns. Nwoyi and Nina chose shredded bamboo shoots, but they couldn't make them. After exchanging the shredded bamboo shoots with brother Kankang, the little boy still frowned and said worriedly, "But I can't make them myself." When the village chief asked if anyone could help them, the warm-hearted Kiki raised her hand first. "Let me help them." Poplar Fruit patted his daughter's little head lovingly and said with a smile. Even if his daughter didn't raise her hand, Poplar Fruit was willing to help these two children whose fathers didn't come. Nina was still savoring the delicious cake that Poplar Fruit's uncle had brought. The little beauty looked at the little sister and her father. She liked this warm and enthusiastic family very much and smiled sweetly. However, Nuoyi's thoughts jumped again. He beamed with joy and said, "I only want the village chief to help me. I like the village chief." The fathers all laughed. They all thought that Nuoyi's words were very interesting. Of course, this suggestion was even more interesting. He had successfully dragged the village chief into the water. "Nuoyi, don't you want my papa to help you?" Kiki still didn't understand. She looked at her father in confusion, then looked at Nuoyi and asked, "My papa is very good at cooking." However, at this moment, Nuoyi was celebrating the success of forming a team with the village chief and didn't pay attention to his good friend's question. He began to make bamboo steamed buns. Fortunately, compared to the helplessness in the Lurs plateau, the villagers here were very enthusiastic. When poplar fruit was kneading the dough, there were enthusiastic villagers who guided him to use the boiled cold grass juice to knead the dough. So there's so much knowledge in it. Poplar fruit laughed as he kneaded the dough. I always thought that steamed buns were noodles made with water. Poplar fruit was quite good at kneading dough. It wasn't because of his experience, but because poplar fruit's kneading of dough was like the pushing hand of Tai Kai. He was faster and stronger than ordinary people, so the dough he kneaded would be very chewy. Papa, Papa. Kiki came back with the washed bamboo shoots. Wow, it's so clean. You're the best. Come, let Daddy give you a kiss. Poplar fruit smiled and turned his head to kiss his daughter's cheek, making the little girl giggle. Kiki watched her father knead the dough from the side. She also started to play with the dough. At this moment, the poplar fruit was almost done kneading the dough. She pressed it, and it was like pressing a pillow. It was not as sticky as before. It was very interesting. Of course, kneading dough was a boring job. Kiki lost interest after playing with it for a minute. Papa, is there anything else I can help you with? Kiki hugged her father's neck and wanted to climb onto his back. Poplar fruit thought for a moment. There really wasn't any job suitable for the little fellow. Of course, making steamed buns was fun, but it wasn't at that step yet. Poplar fruit still had to knead the dough and chop the stuffing, so it would have to wait for a while. You go out and play first. Daddy will call you when it's time to make steamed buns. Poplar fruit said with a smile. Then Papa has to call me. I really like making steamed buns. Kiki giggled as she ran out. Poplar fruit smiled, shook his head, and continued to knead the dough. On the other hand, the little girl ran outside and saw Brother Nwoi washing meat at the sink not far away. Just now, Nwoi put on a good show for the audience. The little boy's thinking was very unique. He actually suggested that the village chief who didn't have a lighter to start a fire by drilling wood. The village chief also doted on Nwoi. Not only did he not expose him, but he also cooperated with him. It was as if Nwoi's method was really good. Sister Pomegranate was stunned. She turned around to look at the village chief and couldn't help but smile. She didn't expect the village chief to be so loving. This didn't seem like his rough appearance at all. Brother Nwoi. Seeing her good friend, Kiki happily ran over and asked, Brother Nwoi, what are you doing? I'm helping to wash the meat, Nwoi said without raising his head. I want to help too. The warm-hearted little girl walked over and stood beside her good friend. She stretched out her white and clean hands to grab the raw pork on the plate and began to wash it. She actually did it very naturally and wasn't afraid of being disgusted at all. Seeing this scene, Kiki's title of the little princess without princess syndrome had one more piece of evidence. One had to know that there were many girls in the city who were spoiled since childhood who were busy washing vegetables, let alone raw pork. They would complain about the hardships and tiredness. Okay, Nwoi said happily. He saw the village chief coming over and said loudly, Village chief, Kiki will help with me. The little girl washed the pork very seriously. She carefully washed the small pieces of pork under the tap. She was much more meticulous than the boys. Of course. The village chief smiled and walked over. He washed the chopping board and asked, Is she also your good friend? Yes, she is, Nwoi said. Who's your best friend in first place? The village chief asked. Nwoi said without hesitation, She's first. Although she was still earnestly helping, it was obvious that a happy smile had appeared on Chichi's little face that was as white as jade when she heard this. She asked somewhat incredulously, I'm the first. You like the most? Is it? Yes. Nwoi did not mind and answered. However, the little girl was very happy and kept smiling. She was embarrassed to laugh out loud, but her little mouth was smiling brightly. She was so happy that she could not close her mouth. When they returned to poplar fruit side, the poplar fruit had already finished cooking the noodles and was starting to make the meat filling for the bamboo shoot. Poplar fruit did not understand, but didn't he have a few teachers around him? After asking the enthusiastic villagers about the method, poplar fruit began. To cut the cured pork, It had to be a large piece that was 70% lean and 30% fat. The skin was removed and then cut into cubes. The villagers were worried that the poplar fruit would not cut well and wanted to help, but the production team did not allow it. However, when they saw the poplar fruit cutting, everyone was relieved. Other things aside, poplar fruit's cutting skills were definitely at the level of a chef. Chop, chop, chop. He used the speed of chopping the stuffing and the sound was intoxicating. When they saw the confident smile on poplar fruit's face as he cut, the female viewers in front of the television were all stunned by how handsome he was. Who was more handsome than a confident and serious man? Besides, poplar fruit's looks were good to begin with. Not to mention this season, even in all 3 seasons, poplar fruit was considered the most handsome man, and he was so good at cooking. He was definitely a male god among male gods. After this episode of Poplar Fruit's show was broadcasted, the number of fans on Weibo increased by a few million again, but this was a story for later. Chapter 1248. Poplar Fruit was preparing the stuffing for the steamed buns. The meat stuffing for the steamed buns required dicing the pork and bamboo shoots, then stir-frying them with oil and salt. Thus, poplar fruit was easy to handle. On the other side, the children's loving interactions were still ongoing. At this moment, it wasn't just Kiki and Nuo Yi. Little Pang Xian also joined in, helping the village chief wash the vegetables and bamboo shoots. At first, Xian simply wanted to drag his sister to another place to play. In the middle of the square, Sister Nina, Brother Dajuan, and Brother Kang were playing happily. In the end, Xian was naturally rejected by Sister Kiki, who was enthusiastically helping. Xian, let's help together, okay? Just as little Pang Xian was about to dejectedly leave, Kiki pulled him back. The 3 children worked together to help the village chief. Although it was less youthful and pink, it was more cheerful and cheerful. Xian's childish voice was still childish, Nuo Yi's imagination was wide open, and his thoughts were jumpy. Chichi was smart and quick-witted, and stories came out of her mouth as soon as she opened her mouth. The 3 little companions were having a lively time with their work. There was no need to mention how happy they were. However, there wasn't much work to do, so the washing was done quickly. Sister Pomegranate helped to stir-fry the pork, and the village chief was busy cutting the bamboo shoots. These chores didn't need the 3 children's help, so they waited outside. After a while, the children, who were always curious about this world, found a new target to explore. First, Kiki curiously took out a long box of seasonings and asked the cameraman what these were. The cameraman told her, but the little girl was still not satisfied. She wanted to try the seasonings herself. She scooped up a small spoonful of unknown seasonings. Of course, the audience understood, because the huge special effects on the television clearly indicated that this was white sugar. It's sweet. The little girl beamed. The white sugar melted into a sweet syrup in her mouth, and when she chewed lightly, it was crispy. She enjoyed it very much. I want it too, I want it too. Little fatty Xian looked at his sister's appearance and his gluttonous bug was triggered. He leaned on the table and said with his mouth wide open. Kiki gave him a small spoonful, and she also gave a spoonful to Nuo, who was equally excited. The 2 children ate happily. Sweet food was indeed the favorite of children. However, Kiki was still not satisfied. She began to try the next condiment. The white sugar in the beginning was indeed delicious, but the audience had already seen what the next condiment was. Pepper. Kiki hadn't eaten yet. The audience was amused when they saw the little girl's expectant expression. Of course, there were some who were pitiful, but everyone sat up straight, wanting to see how the little girl would react. Kiki, who didn't know anything, put the pepper into her mouth as if it was sugar. The moment she put it in her mouth, the little girl was still looking forward to it happily. However, in the next moment, just as the spoon was put down, the little girl suddenly lowered her head and covered her mouth with both hands. She frowned and closed her big eyes tightly. Her friends didn't understand what was going on, but Kiki had already hurriedly turned and ran away. She ran to one side and spat out her saliva. The little girl was especially afraid of spicy food. That mouthful of pepper almost made her faint. After spitting for a while, the cameraman handed her a bottle of water to rinse her mouth. Only then did the little girl recover with tears in her eyes. She wasn't crying, but she was tearing up because of the spiciness. The little girl looked at the cameraman uncomfortably and said honestly, "It's spicy." However, this wasn't the most exciting part. Behind Kiki, there were also two children spitting saliva. Nuo Yi was even more exaggerated, flapping his mouth quickly. What was going on? The camera panned back and the audience saw that after Kiki turned and left, Xian, who was still drooling and asking his sister to feed him a spoonful, didn't understand why his sister turned and ran away. "I want it too, I want it too." Little chubby Xian's gluttonous nature won over his confusion. He turned and asked his brother Nuo Yi to help him. Nuo Yi gave his brother a spoonful, then tried a spoonful himself. Due to their eagerness, they didn't wait for each other to react and they all fell for it. Thus, the scene of the three little fellows spitting and stomping together appeared. So spicy. After drinking some water, Xian felt a little better and laughed foolishly. Nuo Yi, on the other hand, danced for a few minutes before he recovered from the spicy to bitter sourness. 1 silly, 2 silly, 3 silly. The audience was already convulsing with laughter, holding their stomachs as they laughed. There was no choice, the three clowns were too interesting. Presumably, this scene would be captured by the audience and made into various highlights, right? Let's not go too far. Back to the children, because they had all been spiced once, the children all started laughing. It was as if they had gone through thick and thin together. "Village Chief, I think you are too awesome. You are my good friend." Nuo Yi first returned to the kitchen to watch the village chief cut the bamboo shoots. In reality, the village chief's knife skills were really terrible. Not only was the size of the bamboo shoots uneven, there were also all sorts of dangerous knife skills. The hand holding the bamboo shoots was trembling. "Village chief, you have to be careful, don't cut your hand, then your hand will bleed." Nuo Yi started his jumpy nagging, but the little boy was actually very kind and was worried that the village chief would get hurt. "Thank you, baby, I will be careful," the village chief said. At this moment, Kiki also came into patrol, followed by her little follower Xian. Who would have thought that the village chief would really cut his hand? To be exact, he didn't cut his hand, but the knife might have had some gaps. When the village chief used his hand to clean the bamboo shoots on the knife, he accidentally cut his hand. "Ah!" he cried out in pain. This cry gave the children a fright. Kiki was already looking at the village chief. She was so frightened that she took a few steps back, her entire person in a daze. And when she saw the village chief squeezing his finger, the wound oozing red blood, Kiki was even more flustered and frightened. "I don't want you to bleed," Nuo Yi sobbed as he rubbed his eyes. Kiki looked at her little friend in a daze. Her eyes were red and tears were rolling down her cheeks. The little girl was the same as Nuo Yi. They especially liked this village chief uncle who usually treated them very well. And after 2 trips and several meetings at the station, everyone's feelings for each other had deepened. It's okay," the village chief consoled. He wanted to say something else, but he was shocked by Nuo Yi's next cry. Nuo Yi held back his tears and pulled the village chief's hand over to take a look, but he saw the scary wound that had already dyed his entire thumb red. "Whoa, I don't want you to die," Nuo Yi cried loudly. Finally, his emotions infected Kiki, who was already on the verge of tears. Chapter 1249. No one would have thought that a small scratch on his finger would cause such an uproar. First, it was Nuo Yi crying in the kitchen. Then, it was Kiki's emotional crying. Then, it was Xian. Little chubby Xian probably didn't understand why his sister was crying, but seeing his sister crying so sadly, little chubby Xian also felt bad. He followed his sister and cried, "Village chief, we don't want you to die." Then, the other children who were playing in the middle of the square, Nina, Da Jun, and Kang also rushed over. Before they could figure out the situation, they were frightened by the sad scene. Nina cried bitterly, Da Jun cried bitterly, and Kang also couldn't help but wipe her tears. This village chief is completely fine. Why were the children crying so hard? No one knew about this and thought that the village chief was really dead. Sister Pomegranate rushed over in a panic. Poplar Fruit heard the commotion and also rushed over, thinking that something big had happened. In the end, everyone didn't know whether to laugh or cry as they quickly comforted the children. These fools. The village chief didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but his heart was touched. Not to mention how childish the misunderstanding was, but the children cried because of the misunderstanding. Their deep love for him was fully reflected in this misunderstanding. Just like how the village chief secretly wiped his tears behind the camera, and just like how he later shared a picture on the official Weibo after the broadcast of this episode, he said, "I never felt that I was so important to these children." After laughing and crying, all that was left was feeling touched. Although these children had different personalities, each of them had a heart as beautiful as gold. Their love for the adults who treated them well was also sincere and beautiful. "I will cherish your love." The village chief watched it from another angle on the TV and was once again touched. These were his heartfelt words on Weibo. Fortunately, after knowing that the village chief was fine, the children regained their happy smiles. They surrounded the village chief and asked about his well-being. Da Jun even brought over a medicine box. The children surrounded the village chief and applied medicine and bandaged him together. The unfinished work of the village head was handed over to Poplar Fruit, and he had some free time to wait for the stir-fried meat filling to cool down a little. Poplar Fruit's knife skills were much better than the village chief's. He quickly finished preparing the remaining materials in a few minutes. The children were in charge of stirring. The village head taught them how to do it with the task card. Among the 6 children, except for Nina, who didn't like to join in the fun and stood outside, the others were all adding seasonings and pouring in the prepared ingredients in a flurry. Each of them used a pair of chopsticks to stir the food. It wasn't efficient, but it felt good to have friends helping out together. Everyone smiled sweetly. After stirring, Poplar Fruit sealed the big basin with plastic wrap and put it into the fridge. There was only the last bit of ice left for the green bamboo shoots. "Well, Uncle is going back to make bags," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. "Who wants to go and make bags with Uncle?" "I want to make buns with Papa." Kiki ran over and hugged her father's thigh with a smile. "We want to help too." Xian, Nuo Yi, Da Jun, and Kang also excitedly gathered around. They were still immersed in the excitement of working together just now. Of course, Nina was also very excited. Although she didn't like to shout like her brothers, she also waved her small hands and looked eager to try. So, Poplar Fruit led a group of children to his kitchen. Of course, the kitchen couldn't be crowded with so many people, and Grandma was boiling hot water. It wouldn't be good if any of the children got scalded. Poplar Fruit moved everything out, and then invited a villager to stand in front of him. He said, "Children, we are going to make bamboo buns. The ingredients are all ready. Let's ask this aunt to teach us how to make bamboo buns, okay?" Of course, there were cheers. "Papa, you don't know how to make it." Kiki pulled her father's hand and asked in confusion. "I don't know. Dad is not an immortal." "Of course, there are things that I don't know." Poplar Fruit smiled and patted his daughter's little head, and said, "Look carefully. Dad will make bamboo buns with you later." The elder sister was clever and skillful. In less than 2 minutes, a bamboo bun was quickly made. She even deliberately put in a lot of movements so that she could explain the steps. But the elder sister's explanation was indeed a little simple. The children were still confused and just looked at her with admiration. "Well, let me summarize." Poplar Fruit smiled and stood with the elder sister. He explained to the children in a simple way, "We are making bamboo buns. There are a total of 3 steps. The first step is to pinch a piece of dough and knead it into small balls like I did." The children were very excited and began to try, especially the step of kneading into small balls. They all had a lot of fun. "They don't have enough face to make it," the elder sister secretly said to Poplar Fruit. "It doesn't matter. Let them play." Poplar Fruit smiled. He didn't think that the children's cooking was edible. Even if he made it himself, it might not be edible. Like the dough that no one asked about last time. What he valued was the process of everyone working together to make the buns. Although Poplar Fruit really didn't know how to make buns, after the elder sister taught him, he could probably understand what was going on. And he was worthy of being a teacher. After he sorted out the steps of making the buns, the steps began to be simplified, and then the explanation became more interesting and easier to understand. The children, under the guidance of Poplar Fruit, patted a layer of dough, and then added a little bit of warm meat filling, and wrapped it like sandbags. Shen, don't eat the meat filling, that's only half ripe. Poplar Fruit also stopped little Chushen and the other foodies who were ready to eat. Of course, the effect of the first bun wasn't very good. Even the most serious Kiki broke the dough. However, Poplar Fruit still asked them to put their achievements on the banana leaves of the steaming board. Uncle will make the dough for you, and then you can knead it. Knead a few more. When it's done steaming, you can taste it yourselves and let Dad taste it. These are the buns that you made with your own hands, Poplar Fruit said with a smile. He was very happy to see that the children were so engrossed in making the buns, including Nina, who was helping her brother. Papa, look, doesn't mine look like a kung fu panda? Kiki kneaded a big, round bun and happily ran to her father to ask for praise. It's true. It's so beautiful. Kiki is great. Poplar Fruit flattered. How did it look like a kung fu panda? It was a white and fat bun. Mine looks like the ginseng fruit in Sun Wukong. Nuo Yi didn't want to be outdone and raised his masterpiece. Mine is also very beautiful, Shen said. Shen, yours looks a little like yours. Kang said mischievously. At the moment, Yang's bun shop was full of laughter and laughter. It was so lively that it was as if it was the new year. Chapter 1250. Village Chief, sit here. Today, the injured village chief was unusually popular. Usually, he would not sit with the fathers and children for a meal, but with the children's strong welcome, the village chief also sat down. Not only that, he even sat in the middle. On his left were Kiki, Shen, and Kang. On his right were Nuo Yi, Nina, and Dajuan. Clearly, the village chief had become the center of attention for the children. This made the fathers jealous. Zhu Shimin smiled and said, "Where do you want your fathers to sit?" Of course, the children could not sit still. The dishes had not been served yet. Other than Nuo Yi and Nina, who sat beside the village chief to accompany him, the other children were very self-aware and were very willing to run around to help their fathers serve the dishes. The atmosphere was very lively. Kiki was very obedient. She held a bowl and spoon and scooped rice for everyone. The little girl's face was slightly red from the heat and her beautiful bangs were also curled due to sweat. But she was fresh and beautiful, and looked more like a virtuous and beautiful master of my daughter. The dishes for the bamboo shoot banquet that the fathers had prepared meticulously, or rather, worked hard to prepare, began to be served one after another. The audience realized that it wasn't that there weren't any good cooks in this season. For example, Yang Guo should also be a good chef. Just like Chef Huang from the previous season and Zhong Liang from the previous season, they could all be considered to be great cooks. However, there was no situation where he stood out from the crowd. Even though it was a coincidence that he made the mistake, Poplar Fruit could not show off his excellent culinary skills. At most, he could only show off his knife skills. Without any work, no one could confirm that Poplar Fruit's culinary skills were good enough. So in everyone's opinion, the culinary skills of the fathers were all of the same level. They were neither good nor bad, or even slightly bad. Of course, the dishes they made were still edible, but they definitely would not reach the level of artistic dishes or delicacies of the first and second seasons. In this way, not only did it not make everyone feel awkward, but this kind of healthy competition made the show full of fun. For example, Poplar Fruit had cheated him of his noodles countless times. For example, Hu Jun had repeatedly tried to prove himself but was despised by his son. And then there was Lin Yongjian. Every time, he would show the confidence of the god of cookery in the early stages of cooking, but in the end, he would make a 180-degree turn and screw it up. This time, it was actually the same. Every father's dishes were edible, and the taste was not bad. However, they were still unanimously praised by the children. They didn't know what to say, but their father's cooking was delicious. Of course, what all the children were looking forward to was the bamboo shoots that poplar fruit was responsible for. This was because poplar fruit had only made a few bamboo buns, and the rest were made by the children themselves. It's cooked, it's cooked. Come on, serve the buns. Poplar fruit smiled and walked out of the kitchen with a steaming plate. Although it took a long time to steam, it was worth the wait. As soon as he put it down, the children surrounded him with cheers. Be careful, don't touch it first. It's very hot. The fathers quickly hugged their children, and the village chief and Sister Pomegranate also took care of Nuoyi and Nina. Don't touch it, point it to me. Which buns did you make just now? Zhu Shimin smiled and asked Xian Xian. I want to see. It seems like I can't find it. Xian Xian took a few glances. After steaming, the buns were still a little swollen and deformed, so he couldn't recognize them. He said anxiously, I made 3, 5. I want to eat, I want to eat. Don't worry, Poplar Fruit said with a smile. He pointed at the steamer and turned it around. From this scale, clockwise, they are Kangkang, Dajuan, Xian Xian, Nuoyi, and Nina. Kiki and I made this. Wow, you made such beautiful buns. Xian Xian, you're amazing. Zhu Shimin smiled and picked up the biggest one. He asked, did you make this for me? Xian Xian had been waiting with his mouth open for a long time. When he heard his father's words, he was anxious. He pulled his father's hand and said, no, it's to eat with me. On the other side, Hu Jun looked at his son and asked with a smile, you made all these? Kang Zong nodded coldly. However, he was still looking forward to his father's evaluation of his work. He picked the one that looked the best and handed it over. Hu Jun looked at his son, who was pretending not to care, and was a little eager. He found it funny. He tore open the bun and took a bite, then handed the other half over. He said, try it and evaluate it yourself. It's delicious. Kang Kang took the bun and ate it happily. Hu Jun laughed. He rubbed his son's head and said, now, you don't have to go against your conscience to evaluate your buns. He then tasted the bun that his son had made with relish. Kang Zong was still cold. Lin Yongjian was trying to reconcile with his son. He wanted to praise him, but when he saw the first bun with a small head and a big belly, he couldn't help but laugh and ask, did you make this? It's okay. He knew that he couldn't mock his son like that. He quickly smiled and said, Dad can eat. Well, it's delicious. He really grabbed the failed product and ate it. You should try this. I think it's the best. Da Jun didn't want to confront his father. He was afraid that his father would sulk like before. Now, the little warm man was lively again. Nuoyi and Nina were also sharing their works with the village chief and Sister Pomegranate, who they liked. Although the two children's works were the worst, they were very attentive and received praise from the village chief and Sister Pomegranate. Kiki, are you going to give your panda bamboo bun to Dad? Poplar Fruit also pulled a chair and sat down. He asked his daughter with a smile. He thought that his daughter's best work should be shared with her father, who told her to love Dad so much. However, Kiki turned around and ran to the village chief. The little girl was worried about the village chief's injury, so she gave the village chief a bun to express her concern. Well, although Poplar Fruit was a little surprised and sad, he was still happy for his daughter's kindness. However, when his daughter came back, Poplar Fruit picked up Kiki's 2 little braids and used them as a beard. His beard trembled and he said in a muffled voice, Aya, I'm so sad. Because my daughter gave her best panda bun to someone else. Dad didn't even get to eat it. Dad was jealous. Poplar Fruit didn't hide it. Hey, then I'll eat this with Dad. This is also super good. Dad, don't you think it's like a big motor? Kiki picked up another bun and said to her father, you want to eat a big motor? You're so naughty. Poplar Fruit teased his daughter. No, hey. The little girl's laughter was as pleasant as a silver bell, and her smiling face was the most beautiful scenery in the world. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.